A random night, an entire gang led by a man named Kitazawa arms themselves to the teeth. We're talking katanas and all, to take on a single enemy. But their target isn't some monster, it's a 13-year-old kid, Baki. They taunt him, but Baki hops the fence and simply dismantles the group's muscle, Mato, in a flurry of moves so fast you can't even blink. Kitazawa tries his luck with the sword, but Baki doesn't even flinch and knocks him out with a devastating kick. When the rest of the gang, all 100 of them, charges in, Baki doesn't back down. His strategy? Just keep hitting. Even when he looks cornered, he keeps knocking them out one after another. From a car, someone informs a mysterious woman that the score is already 37-0 in Baki's favor. Moments later, Detective Kido shows up to break up the party, and the gang scatters. He takes Baki aside and reveals to his rookie partner that this lone kid is a living street legend. At home, Baki is frustrated, feeling he isn't strong enough to ever reach his father. He visits a high-tech gym, gets angry with his progress, smashes the equipment, and decides he's better off training alone, while a group is hunting for someone to defeat Baki, and stumbles upon the name Hanayama, a 15-year-old gang leader with the strength of the Hulk. Baki is on a different path. He walks into a boxing gym, watches a champion named Yuri humiliate a Muay Thai fighter, and, without a second thought, steps into the ring to challenge him. His coach thinks it's suicide, but Yuri, who descends from a line of warriors, accepts on the spot. After all, his clan's rule is simple: never refuse a fight. In the ring, Yuri unleashes a flurry of blows and drops Baki, but the kid gets up smiling. He's finally found someone on his level. As the fight heats up, a flashback reveals Yuri once fought a pack of wolves. It was there he learned to read his opponent's movements, like a sixth sense for combat.
Breathing, their bloodlust, their power. No, I can. I'm more powerful than all of them.
Using this reading ability, he predicts Baki's attack and knocks him out with a brutal counter, calling it a warrior's courtesy. Baki wakes up, faces the first defeat of his life, and leaves in tears. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the Yakuza await their new 15-year-old boss, Hanayama. A rival mocks him, and Hanayama's response is insane. He tears a deck of cards apart with his bare fingers, lets a professional fighter punch him in the face without flinching, and then breaks the man's arm and knocks him out. And who's pulling the strings? Emi, Baki's mother, already setting the stage for a fight between her son and Hanayama. Baki, meanwhile, rejects formal training, throws a backpack that must weigh a ton over his shoulders, and vanishes into the world, determined to get stronger. In the darkness, Baki scales a cliff with the impossibly heavy pack on his back. He slips and nearly falls to his death, but saves himself at the last second. In the morning, exhausted, he reaches a cabin and is lifted from the ground by a giant named Endo. As Baki rests, a colossal bear appears, only to be taken down by a creature no one even sees. Inside the cabin, the two devour the animal's meat. Baki confesses he lost to a boxing champion, and Endo scoffs, calling him weak before splitting a log with a single swing of his axe. Endo offers to train the boy, but Baki refuses. His goal is Yasha Crag. The giant warns him that a monster lives there, a nearly 10-foot-tall beast, the Yasha ape, which even his father, Yujiro, once faced. Baki doesn't care. He sets up camp nearby, and the beast attacks. Endo jumps in to help and gets mauled. To save his friend, Baki uses gunpowder to cauterize the wounds, calls for a helicopter, and is left alone, terrified but resolute. His mother, Emi, explains that Baki is trying to cross the line, to break the barrier of pain and flood his body with endorphins. In a brutal training session, he pushes his body and mind to their absolute limit, feels the adrenaline spike, and throws himself off the cliff. With surgical precision, he grabs onto the rock face, survives the impact, falls into the water below, and screams his target's name, Yujiro. Now convinced he can defeat his father, Baki goes after the Yasha ape. He lights a circle of fire on the ground, essentially creating an arena, and calls the beast out. The exchange is savage. Baki punches and kicks, but the beast is a veritable tank. It bites and claws. And when Endo shows up with a shotgun, Baki stops him. This fight is mine. Realizing human techniques won't work against the creature, he sinks in a rear-naked choke until the beast passes out. But Baki celebrates too soon. The Yasha ape awakens, beats him senseless, and buries him under a pile of rocks. Defeated, Baki follows the monster to its cave, where he finds the bones of its mate. There, he returns the skull that Yujiro stole years ago and, weeping, asks for forgiveness. The beast is moved, offers Baki its kill, and disappears. The boy leaves with a new perspective on strength and life.
It is the one opponent that will never be dominated.
Baki returns from his spiritual retreat and is picked up by his mother's assistant. At the mansion, Emi shows him a video. Yuri has gained 30 pounds and moved up to heavyweight. Baki is unimpressed. He just got slower. Behind the scenes, Kitazawa tries to hire the doctor fighter Yuri to face Baki, but he refuses. Kitazawa then informs Hanayama that his fight with Baki is scheduled after Yuri's, but Hanayama's gang is already planning to jump the kid first. Baki heads to Yuri's gym and provokes him. Boxing isn't a true martial art. An angered boxer punches the heavy bag. Baki responds with a single strike that explodes the bag, sending water everywhere. The message is clear. Boxers are no match for grapplers. On the night of the title match, Yuri is a no-show. A flashback reveals him defending his sister from a wolf pack and learning that you only lose when your heart gives up. The truth is, Hanayama ambushed him, threatened his coach with a knife, and crushed Yuri's hand. The news breaks. Baki, watching on TV with Emi, instantly knows who is responsible. Kitazawa describes Hanayama as a cold-blooded monster. Baki, thrilled, storms Hanayama's office, kicks a flying table at him, and issues his challenge. Baki lands a few kicks to the boss's face, even bringing him to his knees. When the police arrive, Baki vanishes, leaving a message. Call me when you want a real fight. In the car, the driver is trembling, but Baki is exhilarated by his new rival's power. Down on the street, Hanayama proves why he's the boss. He flips the police car with his bare hands and then rips a tire apart with just his fingers. A detective watches from afar. This is the law of the strong. At the hospital, Yuri wakes from a nightmare of his hand being crushed. His manager shows up to humiliate him and threaten his sister, but Baki appears out of nowhere, twists the coward's ear, and throws him out. Yuri admits his career is over. Elsewhere, Hanayama visits his terminally ill mother. He brings her roses, crushes them in his hand, and caresses her face with unexpected tenderness. Then, he delivers his sentence with chilling coldness. Baki Hanma will die. The fight explodes into action. Baki hits Hanayama so hard the man flies through a wall, revealing a giant screen behind him. Hanayama gets up, rips off his shirt, and reveals a massive physique with a demon tattooed on his back.
Is that not the illest tat ever put on human flesh?
A symbol of strength and courage.
A man in glasses explains it's the standing man, the symbol of the Hanayama family. In a flashback, a young Hanayama endures the needle of a master tattooist, saying the work is incomplete. He disappears to Kobe, wakes up a yakuza who killed his father, and the resulting sword scars become the tattoo's finishing touch. Back in the fight, Baki's strikes don't even make Hanayama flinch. The giant traps the boy's arm and crushes it. Baki dislocates his own thumb to escape, uses the momentum, and throws the boss. They both go down, but Baki is up first. He refuses to win by forfeit and calls for Hanayama to get back up. The behemoth enters the ultimate stance, an all-or-nothing attack. They charge for a final clash. Baki flies into a wall, and both are knocked unconscious. Hanayama is declared the winner until Baki rises again. The trick? He bit a shard of glass in his cheek to keep from passing out. Impressed, Hanayama concedes defeat. A helicopter approaches, carrying Captain Stridham, who is looking for a sinister, red-haired man smiling in the shadows.
Time has come.
In a remote, snowy landscape, a man recounts seeing Yujiro Hanma kill a giant polar bear with his bare hands. As Yujiro walked away, the demon on his back seemed to be smiling. Cut to the present, where Yujiro simply leaps from a skyscraper, swings on a rope, and enters through the window of the arena where Baki and Hanayama lie exhausted. He mocks them both, calls them cowards, and publicly disowns his son. Hanayama rises to face him, and the scene shifts. Flashback. At a lavish party, Baki's mother, Emi, is with her new husband, Aiichi, who has set up a ring in the middle of the ballroom. A judo master wins in seconds. Suddenly, Yujiro crashes the party. Aiichi mocks his clothes. Yujiro rips them off and steps into the ring. He destroys the master in seconds, grabs Emi, kisses her passionately, and throws her husband to the floor. He tells her she possesses the hatred necessary to bear his son, Baki, who will become the strongest man in the world. Later, Emi lies to the police to protect Yujiro and vows to raise Baki to surpass his father, just a perfectly normal family. Baki is having tea with his mother Emi, but instead of affection, he gets pure scorn. She shows him a video of Yujiro defeating Hanayama without breaking a sweat and tells him he may never reach that level. Baki retorts. For him, fighting is about connection and respect. For Yujiro, it's only about domination. He declares his hatred, and any hand hands him a letter from Hanayama requesting a visit. At the hospital, Baki finds his friend looking like a mummy, his bones shattered by Yujiro. Still, Hanayama wrote a letter with his mouth, encouraging Baki to overcome the ogre. Touched, Baki promises he will. He begins a Shaolin-level training regimen, which includes a Chinese technique of sensing a bird's intention and preventing it from flying off his arm. Yujiro appears out of nowhere, schedules their fight for 1 month from now, and throws Baki a gift.
He was weak!
Mad with grief, Baki attacks and is thrown aside. He remembers returning the ape's mate's skull and receiving a tusk as a gift. Stridum appears to explain Yujiro's power, an ego forged on battlefields. Baki demands to go through the same. The destination is Hokkaido, the hellish training ground that forged Yujiro into a legend. From a helicopter, Baki parachutes into a sinister forest. The instructor warns him 5 enemies are waiting for him. The moment he touches down, Baki is caught in a rear naked choke while reading the map and passes out. He wakes up surrounded by 5 men who underestimate him, despite his physique. Baki flies into a rage, but they use gas, and he's out again. Elsewhere, Stridum is dining with an old man, who confesses there are only 2 people he can't beat, Yujiro and 1 other man. When he learns Baki has gone to this training camp, he panics. The reason? The second unbeatable man, Gaia, is in the mercenary group. Gaia is a force of nature, a master of the battlefield whom even Yujiro couldn't defeat. Back in the woods, Baki breaks free from his restraints, confronts a soldier man, dodges a knife attack and, in a bizarre move, snaps the blade before taking the man down with a single punch.
You jungle freak! 1 down, only 4 to go.
In a clearing, 3 soldiers are buried up to their necks. One of them, Gaia, simply rips himself out of the earth with pure will and becomes someone else. Gaia, the super soldier, is born. In a flash, Stridum remembers encountering Gaia in the jungle and earning the scars on his face. Back in the fight, Gaia spits in the face of Baki and Yujiro. They fight for sport, they're amateurs. He fights for survival. Baki unleashes a flurry of strikes, but Gaia dodges as if he's dancing. He reveals his secret, 2 personalities in one body and total control over his adrenaline. With it, he launches Baki into a lake with the force of a car crash. Underwater, Baki's body floods with endorphins. He leaps from the water, and the fight resumes on another level. Gaia lets out a paralyzing scream, an ancient yoga technique, and tries to strangle Baki with a vine. But Baki breaks free and decides to stop thinking, letting his body fight on instinct. In this state, he finally lands a clean hit and sinks in a rear naked choke, putting Gaia to sleep. Gaia wakes up, surrenders, and invites Baki to eat with the squad. After the meal, enemies become friends. Baki reflects, the best friendships are born in war. Stridum reports that Baki survived. Yujiro, annoyed by his son's growing fame, decides to steal the spotlight. He invades the Prime Minister's residence, walks through a SWAT team alone, crushes the man's desk with a handshake, and, looking into the terrified politician's eyes, tells him his security is a joke. Then he leaves. Emi finds the whole thing hilarious. To her, Yujiro is the strongest man in the world. Baki is a nobody. Meanwhile, Baki is training with a swordsman named Kurokawa. After witnessing a display of impossible speed, he asks to be cut but manages to dodge, getting only a scratch. Later, some thugs surround him, but Hanayama appears out of nowhere and scares them off. That night, Emi is planning to offer Baki as a present to Yujiro. When Yujiro arrives, he breaks up with her and slaps her across the face. Devastated, Emi runs to the lobby and finds Baki. In a total breakdown, she blames her son for Yujiro leaving her. In a fit of pain, she punches and bites Baki, calls him weak, and runs off, leaving him completely alone.
Amy!
Baki goes to Hanayama and shows him the bite marks his own mother left. He finally understands. The only thing Eni wants is to see Yujiro win. Kureya gives him a reality check. You're lucky to have a mother. Mine is dying of cancer, so cherish yours. Invitations to the big fight are sent out, and a VIP audience is forming, with Yuri, Gaia, and even the wrestler Mount Toba attending. Emi, meanwhile, is in pieces. Yujiro doesn't love her, and she feels like a failure. Alone with her servant, she delivers a cruel ultimatum. Baki must defeat the ogre if he ever wants to be loved again. If Baki wins, she lives. If he loses, she'll kill herself. Without rest, Baki trains for 12 hours straight. Stridum brings some punks for him to warm up on, but soon Hanayama and Yuri arrive for some real sparring. They're shocked by Baki's newfound speed. Gaia appears on a rooftop to confront Yujiro, who sends him flying with a single punch. Baki reveals his secret. He's been training with over 40 pounds of extra weight the whole time. On the night of the duel, everyone gathers, even a bandaged up Gaia. An earthquake begins. Yujiro punches the ground and it stops. Baki, consumed by rage, charges at his father with a flurry of attacks. For the first time, Emi feels hope. Baki manages to jump on Yujiro's back and lock in a rear naked choke, and Emi bitterly remarks that it looks like a father carrying his son. The ogre throws Baki off, but he lands on his feet and responds with a storm of blows, activating his endorphin mode. Yujiro scoffs, thanks the audience for watching his son's failed attempt to become a man, and invites Eni to help him rip the boy's heart out. To everyone's shock, she accepts and tells Baki to give his father something to be proud of. Betrayed, Baki explodes with rage but is knocked out with a single kick. Yujiro says he could have killed Baki twice while he was dazed and, now fighting seriously, easily defeats him again. As he starts to beat Baki on the ground, Emi steps in and declares herself the new opponent. She attacks. He blocks, embraces her tightly, and crushes her back. She dies in his arms.
You have such beautiful anger, Emi.
Yujiro throws her body onto Baki and then takes down all the other warriors who try to advance. Later, Baki carries his mother's body through the streets, mourning her loss. He calls Kuriagawa and vows, in 2 years, he'll be strong enough to avenge Emi, and he walks off, alone, into the desert. Detective Tito is looking for Baki and admits that he used to see him as just another delinquent. Now he gets it. The kid has a hunger that the normal world can't satisfy. Tito bemoans the boy's tragic childhood, but Kuriagawa concludes, it was in battle that Baki found his friends. He will never be alone again. Tokugawa, a fight-promoting billionaire, is complaining to a wrestler named Igari that today's warriors have lost their edge. That's when Igari drops a name that makes everyone tremble: Yujiro's son. The story picks up with Baki, who has already dominated Japan and gone to the US to hunt for monsters, only to find the competition too weak. He discovers that the real no-rules fighting is in Brazil, with a legend named Dixon. In Rio, Baki enters a mansion filled with trophies from the champion's 700 victories, only to find him in a wheelchair, covered in bandages. Dixon confesses that the quest for strength can blind you, and that even he, the undefeated, was defeated. His advice is direct: go back to Japan and enter the underground arena. There, a champion like him would be a mere novice. Back home, Baki invades Tokugawa's mansion, gets past the head of security Shumei and everyone else with ease, and presents himself on his knees in the courtyard. He wants to enter the arena to surpass Yujiro. Impressed, Tokugawa accepts but warns him, start at the bottom. The big secret? The arena is hidden underneath the Tokyo Dome. Baki visits his mother's grave, not realizing Hanayama is watching from a distance. The big man finds out Baki is back and fighting in the underground. At the Shinshinkai dojo, Master Doppo Orochi receives Tokugawa, who has a small problem. His champion Baki is so dominant that the audience is getting bored. He asks for Doppo's son Katsumi to be the next challenger, but the kid is training in the States. Doppo agrees to watch the next fight. The conversation is interrupted by Kato, a former student who storms the dojo, takes everyone down, and mocks traditional training, demanding a shot in the arena. Tokugawa is intrigued, but Doppo teaches him a quick lesson, slicing Kato's forehead with a single finger. Meanwhile, Baki is having a sweet moment with Kozue, his landlady's daughter. Her mother remembers her husband, who was also a fighter, and wishes the boy luck. Later, Doppo buys Kato dinner, listens to his bragging, calls him a cheap imitation, and overpowers him using dirty tricks. In the end, he invites him to the arena. They descend 7 floors beneath the Tokyo Dome into a packed secret coliseum. The main event? Baki Hanma versus Kolshol, a master of severing nerves. And the rule is clear: there are no rules. Meanwhile, Kozue is looking for Baki at home, but he's already in the ring. Tokugawa explains to Doppo that Kolshol practices Himokiri karate, the art of nerve cutting. He once saw the man take down a bull in Spain with a single strike. The fight begins. Baki strikes first, but Kolshol counters with surgical precision, leaving his right arm completely useless. In excruciating pain, Baki fights on. Kolshol shifts his stance, becoming beast-like, and tears into Baki's body with claw-like strikes, damaging his right eye. Blind on one side with a useless arm, Baki is nearly finished. As Kolshol leaps for the final blow, Baki catches his hand and locks him in a submission. Kolshol doesn't tap and screams, "Break my arm." Baki hesitates, then complies and knocks him out. In the infirmary, he explains it was a mercy knockout to avoid ending his career. As he leaves, Kato and the legendary Izo Motobe are already waiting. Outside, Stridum throws cold water on his victory. Baki is still nowhere near Yujiro, and the ogre is on his way. Kato returns to the Shinshinkai dojo, all fired up, saying the place has become a spa. Their top fighter, Takagi, accepts the challenge. Kato calls him a coward for a past mistake and knocks him out effortlessly. He then turns the dojo into a battlefield and KOs everyone else. Meanwhile, Baki is napping in class. Later, some older bullies corner him for money. Kozue tries to defend him, but Baki grabs her and runs, leaving her confused as to why the arena champion would flee from a few nobodies. At Tokugawa's mansion, 5 top fighters argue over Baki's next opponent and scoff at one name, the old master Izo Motobe. Kato crashes the meeting demanding the fight, followed by pro wrestling star Antonio Igari. As they argue, Baki finds Motobe and asks to train with him. The old man humiliates him in a sparring session, reading his every move. The same bullies corner Kozue for revenge. A friend alerts Baki, who flies over, dismantles the guys in seconds, sends Kozue home, and rushes to the Tokyo Dome. His opponent is revealed, the giant Mount Toba. The fight begins, and Baki is immediately run over and thrown like a ragdoll. Mount Toba ignores the doctor's warning. His Mii is shot, but he wants to test his true strength. The fight barely starts before a blow sends Baki down. He gets up, only to be overwhelmed by throws and slams that make the ground shake. In the stands, Tokugawa tells the giant story, the giant demon who honored American wrestling after his master was murdered. Cornered, Baki decides to target the head. He breaks Toba's guard and unloads a shower of punches, but gets caught in a rear naked choke. With a disgustingly brilliant idea, Baki bites his own tongue and spits blood in the giant's eyes to escape, dropping him with a kick. Toba rises furiously, lands a devastating lariat, sinks in the choke again, and finishes him with a suplex that cracks the ring. The move awakens his old fighting spirit. He glares at the fallen Baki and sees him get up again. Toba tries to take a step, but his body collapses. He's hit his limit. Later, the doctor explains, Baki broke Toba's knee in a way that it will heal even stronger, a gesture of respect between warriors. As Baki raises his arms, the shadow of Yujiro Hanma appears in the arena. Yujiro Hanma strolls into the ring uninvited, and his son, pride shattered, attacks head-on. In seconds, he's a toy. Yujiro humiliates the kid to show the gap between them and knocks him out with a flick of his finger. Then, he faces the organizers and lays down the law. Any tournament that ignores the strongest in the world is a joke. The provocation works, drawing out Doppo Orochi, the tiger killer. He shows the scars from his first encounter with the ogre and challenges him on the spot. Tokugawa practically applauds and sets the duel for 3 days from now.
Challenge this monster to my first match.
Very well.
Then the match will take place in 3 days!
In the locker room, Baki, swallowing his pain and failure, warns Doppo, Yujiro isn't a fighter. He's a monster that only gets stronger. Outside, to relax, Yujiro walks into a boxing gym and dismantles everyone in minutes, like he's shaking off sleep. Baki rushes to Doppo's dojo to try and save him, only to find him dominating multiple students at once. He tries a surprise kick to prove the master isn't ready, and only gets a thank you. According to Doppo, it helped him awaken. On the streets, Yujiro walks through another ambush. Motobe attempts revenge and is brushed aside effortlessly. Doppo then reveals his ghost to Baki. 10 years ago, drunk and unprepared, he was hunted down and defeated by Yujiro. He hasn't had a drink since, and has trained only for this rematch. Baki, still in disbelief, punches a sandbag as if he could punch fate itself. Tokugawa appears and drops another bomb on the kid. He has a new opponent. Elsewhere, a man faces a gigantic tiger and kills it with his bare hands. Meet Dr. Kureya, a surgeon who turned his own body into a laboratory and medicine into a weapon. He confirms to his brother Kolshol he will fight Baki Hanma in the gym while leg pressing an absurd amount of weight. Kureya explains his life's project. He doesn't want revenge. He wants to measure the result of the experiment he has become, the power of a boxer, the speed of a sprinter, and the flexibility of a gymnast, all in one body. When a guy at the gym mocks him, Kureya responds with minimal movements and surgical touches that shut the giant down like flipping a switch. Kolshol watches, terrified of what his brother has become. Meanwhile, a 55-year-old Doppo says goodbye to his wife and heads for the dome. Baki goes too, the image of his father hammering in his mind. In the arena, the bombshell drops. Tonight we'll have two main events, Doppo Orochi versus Yujiro Hanma and Kureha versus Baki Hanma. The clash of titans begins. Doppo tries for a necktie, but Yujiro slips out like it's a friendly hug. They face off in a physical chess match. Yujiro steps with the ancient technique of Dondai, the stance that is the absence of a stance. Doppo mounts a defense that a bulldozer couldn't break. The ogre's pride gets the better of him. He charges in, but the old tiger strikes back, slamming the beast to the ground. Yujiro cracks a small smile. Playtime is over. He rips his shirt off, revealing a nightmare of muscle. His back contracts and forms the face of a demon. Stridum whispers to Baki what it truly means, a lifetime dedicated to destruction until the body itself becomes something impossible. The demon back appears, and with it, the massacre begins. Doppo's karate becomes an eggshell in a hurricane. The silence in the crowd is heavier than the blows themselves, yet Doppo gets up, a stubborn tree stump in the storm. He refuses to die on his feet because giving up would be a worse death. Yujiro even acknowledges his courage and stops his heart with a final blow. He declares his opponent dead and turns his back, never looking back.
Doppo's dead.
What?
In the medical room, the defibrillators fail. Hope is fading. That's when Kureha steps in. He ignores protocol, shoves his hand into Doppo's abdomen, and massages the heart back to life, like pulling someone from the bottom of a pool. Doppo is rushed to the hospital. Kureha, now standing before Baki, promises to show him how to truly destroy a human body. To prove that science and strength go hand in hand, he rips a tire in half in the arena. Before the fight, a woman in a wheelchair and her friends beg Baki. Kureha is a mad scientist and executioner in a lab coat. Defeat him. Baki steps into the ring, eyes filled with hatred. He charges, throwing and controlling the boy as if he already knows his every move. Kicks and punches rain down like a storm, and Kureha gets up without a scratch, smiling. He taunts Baki, and worse, mocks the pain of his former victims in the audience. Your suffering, he says, was for science. And he proves he's not just talk. Every counter is an anatomy lesson, with fingers striking precise points to multiply the pain. High above, Yujiro watches with the indifference of an absent father at graduation. Izo notes that Baki is using his skill of letting blows graze him to minimize damage. Baki himself confirms it. So far, Kureha hasn't landed a single clean hit. Arrogance has a price. Kureha grabs Baki, finds a bone behind his shoulder, and breaks it with surgical method, injecting pain directly into the nerve. He attacks organs, adjusts the boy's jaw with a slap, and knocks him out. The announcer is already calling the end of the fight when Yujiro descends and steps onto the ring, but Baki returns, driving his father away with a look. This fight is mine. He confesses to Yasuko the reason. He needs to win here so that one day he can face the ogre himself. Baki proposes a one-punch duel. Kureha accepts. The kid locks his joints, plants his feet, and focuses his entire body into a single impact. The punch tears through Kureha's abdominal muscles and drops him. The fight is over. In the infirmary, Yasuko, moved by Baki's strength, rises from her wheelchair and takes her first steps. Baki, with no time to rest, heads for the mountains. The journey cannot stop. Doppo Orochi, the living legend, is recovering while telling his war stories, including the night he fought a tiger bare-handed. To prove the legend still breathes, he turns a stack of boards into sawdust as if they were crackers. Then, he announces his heir in the tournament, Katsumi Orochi. The reason is clear. The man has the physique of a Greek statue and absurd talent. With Tokugawa, his entry is official. The organizer gathers the fighters, shows off a historic championship belt, and kicks off the maximum tournament. Baki arrives at the dome in his luxury ride with Kozue in tow, but their destination isn't the stands. It's the secret arena, 6 stories beneath the city. In the gladiators room, Baki comes face to face with a menagerie of fighters, Mount Toba, Kosho, and many others. Tokugawa presents the 32 names to a crowd hungry for violence, and so it begins. Baki Hanma versus the giant wrestler Artemis Reagan. Baki instantly grabs the colossus like a rag doll, throws in a taunt to lure the giant in, then unleashes a flurry flurry of kicks to the head that knocks him out cold. On the way out, Kozue looks at him, frightened. She doesn't recognize him. Baki replies coldly, "This is my world, and in it, I can't afford to lose." The tournament heats up with Rob Robinson, the king of kickboxing, facing off against pro wrestling legend Kanji Igari. Despite being called an old geezer, Igari withstands the pressure, turns the tables, and seals the deal with the backdrop trinity. Soon after, Jujutsuka Izo Motobe takes on Kinryuzan. Motobe attempts a finger lock, but Kinryuzan breaks the hold, counters with a brutal throw, and finishes him with a stomp to the head. Tokugawa reveals the tournament brackets, promising some serious showdowns. In a dojo, Katsumi Orochi trains with his father until Retsukayo kicks the door down. He declares it's blasphemy for the kid to be called the new face of karate. Sergei tries to break up the fight and ends up with a match of his own. In the ring, Retsu invokes 3,000 years of Chinese tradition and ends the fight in the blink of an eye with the whirling lotus.
Match over!
Backstage, a fighter appears, all busted up, whispering that his opponent isn't human. The next man to fight, Robert, is also found unconscious. Then the beast emerges, the son of the Yasha ape. Tokugawa had summoned the creature as a reserve fighter and offers a rematch to Kato. He accepts, but his kicks don't even tickle the beast, which grabs him and throws him across the arena. As the final blow comes, Katsumi leaps in front, ready to take his place. Katsumi doesn't wait for an invitation. He pulls the Yasha ape into the ring and takes Kato's spot. Baki, pissed at the audacity, rushes to the arena. Katsumi's karate becomes a machine gun of strikes. The primate is knocked out by a kick to the head. Just as he's about to finish it, Baki appears out of nowhere and strikes Katsumi, preventing the mercy blow. Tensions flare, and the two trade blows until Kato steps between them, telling them to save the fight for the tournament. Baki swears he will defeat Katsumi, for the creature's sake. Meanwhile, Inagi, a Kempo master, prepares to prove his style's superiority against the brawler Hanayama. In the arena, the Yakuza enters with the calm of someone who has nothing to lose. He ignores the taunts, crushes a protective mask with one hand, and even offers a sword, which Inagi shatters. The gong barely sounds before Hanayama shatters his opponent's leg in a few swift strikes. Master Goki Shibukawa storms the ring to defend his student. Hanayama just laughs and calls him a hypocrite. The night continues with Dopo meeting Roland Gustave, the protege of an old rival who once killed a lion with his bare hands. Back at the dome, Katsumi faces Gustave. It's speed versus brute force. The Russian dislocates the Japanese fighter's arm, and the world holds its breath, but Katsumi pops it back into place and keeps fighting. In the end, a bizarre, almost circus-like finish. He plants his head on the ground, does a handstand, and lands a precise kick that knocks Gustave out cold. A captain receives his orders for Operation Code Zero. The passenger he's to escort is described as more volatile than nitroglycerin. The jet lands, and Yujiro Hanma steps out like he owns the airport. A single glance from him is enough to turn the captain's soul to dust. At the dome, Baki and Katsumi almost come to blows, but Hanayama interrupts the scuffle with a message. "This one's my next opponent." In the ring, Ian McGregor faces Moko Lee. The Taekwondo master destroys the boxer's legs until he's cornered. Against the wall, McGregor turns into Spider-Man. He uses the momentum to launch himself forward and lands a perfect punch that drops Moko. In the corridors, Tokugawa comes face to face with the ogre. Yujiro scoffs at the tournament's selection, calling half the fighters dead weight, and to prove his point, he dismantles some random dude on the spot. He's brought his own reserve fighter, Yu Amanai. The young man even tries to stand up to the master, calling him a man without a conscience. Yujiro just laughs. The next fight pits Chiharu Shiba, a gang leader, against Judoka Kohei Hatamaka. Shiba's arm breaks, but he violently forces it back into place, spits out some blood, and wins the fight with a series of headbutts that would make a rhino think twice. Out in the city, Jack Hanma approaches Kozue. Baki arrives just in time to mark his territory. Later, we see Jack pumping his body full of an overdose of steroids. His physique distorts, his eyes glowing. The final match of Block C pits the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master, Sergio Silva, against the mysterious pit fighter, Jack Hanma. Tradition is clear. To this day, no one from another style has ever beaten the Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. The gong sounds. Silva goes for a takedown, but Jack doesn't budge an inch. He breaks the hold with the strength of a hydraulic press and lifts his opponent by the head before slamming him into the mat. The dome falls silent. Jack wins, becoming the first to break the Jiu-Jitsu curse. Amused by the situation, Yujiro leaps from the stands to challenge Jack. Baki steps in front of him, saying Jack doesn't deserve to fight the ogre yet. Jack catches Baki's punch with one hand. Yujiro shoves Baki aside like he's swatting a fly, and Jack uses the moment to promise Yujiro they'll fight another time. The ogre laughs and accepts.
We'll continue this heart-to-heart some other time, Yujiro.
Baki, bleeding, is handed a towel by a new face, Yu Amanai, recommended by Yujiro. Amanai enters as a reserve against Minoru Yamamoto, a shoot wrestling champion. He displays a technique that seems to defy gravity, floating in the air while delivering a sequence of kicks. The referee stops the fight, but Amanai continues, stomping on his already unconscious opponent's head. Afterward, with cruel indifference, he asks for the mess to be cleaned up. Richard Filth decides to prove his body is made of stone. 3 thugs break baseball bats over his back, and the man responds with a pose that sends his attackers running in fear. Baki and Kato comment that the next to face Filth is Doppo Orochi. The rumor is that this brute is immune to pain. A flashback shows Filth in a tuxedo, taking a beating from a heavyweight before knocking him out with a single punch. Filth enters the ring. Doppo also arrives in a suit. With no referee, the big man lands a straight punch that drops the master. Doppo gets up laughing. To him, it was just a tickle. He strikes back with a kick to the gut. In a Sanchin stance, he blocks, reads his opponent, and finishes with strikes to the neck and face. In the end, the two bow to each other with the respect of warriors.
Orochi shows that he is not too big to share the spotlight.
Next, the old man Goki Shibukawa faces the giant Roger Harlan. The size difference is almost comical, until Shibukawa effortlessly dodges and throws the Colossus to the ground. A flick to the neck and Harlan collapses, a win for the old-timer. Later, Doppo faints backstage. His wife finds him, and Katsumi promises to win for her. Up next, a family grudge match, Kureya against his brother, Kolshol. Kolshol wants to forfeit. Kureya lays down the truth. He arranged the fight specifically to bridge the chasm between them. He promises to break his brother to free him from his demons. Kolshol's rage finally ignites. The two face off in the center of the ring, ready for the most violent therapy session imaginable. It's brother against brother. Kolshol starts the fight by digging his cord-cutting technique into Kureya's body. The doctor's left side goes completely numb. In the audience, Doppo and Katsumi hold their breath as they see how the move has been perfected. The fist now rotates 360 degrees, making it nearly impossible to defend against. Kolshol pummels a defenseless Kureya until the doctor snaps back to life. He had foreseen everything, and with terrifying precision, he reconnected his own nerves to neutralize his brother's technique. The taunt works, and Kolshol charges forward. Kureya responds with a bodyquake strike, sending shockwaves through his opponent's entire body. Broken on the inside, Kolshol issues an ultimatum. Either Kureya loses the fight, or he loses his brother forever. A childhood memory flashes through the doctor's mind. He embraces Kolshol and forfeits the match. The referee declares Kolshol the winner, and the two are finally reunited as family.
Reconciliation that blossomed as a result. Two brothers reunited in the arena.
Next up, Baki faces Zulu. Before the gong even rings, the giant launches a cheap shot. Tokugawa lets the fight continue. Baki takes the hits, smiles, and ends it all with a single kick that knocks him out. The organizer ignores the referee and confirms the victory. Kanji Igari enters the ring to congratulate Baki, and Kinryuzan appears right after, planting the seeds for the next bout. It's time for the Clash of Worlds. Pro wrestler Kanji Igari versus Kinryuzan. The sumo ritual opens the night, with the father offering water to his son. The gong sounds. Igari's blows bounce off him like he's a brick wall. Kinryuzan tosses him around the ring as easily as moving a piece of furniture. Igari changes the game. He mimics the sumo stance, draws a circle on the ground, and pulls the Kinryuzan into an improvised ring. They grapple, and Igari manages to lock his arm in a double key lock, pulling him into a suplex. Kinryuzan reverses the move and lifts Igari for what would be a fatal pile driver. At the last second, out of pure honor, he puts his hand down to cushion the blow, breaking his own arm to avoid killing his opponent. His father, seeing that the position, the 5 Rings Destroyer, was inescapable, throws in the towel. Igari wins. Backstage, the act of honor comes at a great cost. Ashamed, Kinryuzan cuts off his top knot, signifying his retirement. Igari vows to win the tournament in his honor. The night continues with Retsukayo against a reserve fighter, but it's Mount Toba who parachutes into the arena, attacking Retsu by surprise. A single single kick solves the problem. Finally, the duel everyone has been waiting for is announced. Katsumi Orochi versus Hanayama. They barely make contact before the world turns upside down. Hanayama executes a perfect spinning double kick, a work of refined karate, and drops Katsumi. The young man laughs and criticizes him. Nice move, but you failed to finish. You street punk. The exchange of heavy blows sweeps across the ring. Katsumi goes down and gets back up over and over. Hanayama just waits, never ending the fight. Katsumi takes a hit that leaves him weakened. On the verge of defeat, he musters strength from nowhere, steps on Hanayama's solar plexus like a stair, launches himself into the air, and lands an uppercut that rattles the giant. In a trance, Katsumi goes into a rage mode and unleashes a storm of strikes. Hanayama counters with the iron claw, striking his opponent's leg. Even with a destroyed leg, the cheers of his friends and the shadow of his father push Katsumi forward. He rips his gi. Hanayama turns around, revealing a massive tattoo of a man on his back. As he turns around, he takes a decisive blow to the back and gets knocked out. Katsumi wins. In the locker room, Chiharu Shiba appears to announce he's next, against the champion, Ian McGregor. The taunts fly until Shiba shatters his own cast by smashing his plastered arm against his head. Underneath is a deformed, heavily scarred limb. The gong sounds. Shiba uses his club arm and throws cast dust into the boxer's eyes. Then, he ties their ankles together with the sash from his robe, and thus, the Dart Connection is born. A fight literally fought with their legs bound. McGregor takes a beating, falls, but gets back up. A vision of an old bare-knuckle champion ignites his fury. His manager throws in the towel, but he refuses to stop, and the referee lets the fight continue. Shiba pulls out a knife and cuts the sash. McGregor responds by tearing off his own gloves. Now it's street versus street. McGregor dominates until he's hit with a headbutt that would make a bell ring. Even so, he's about to finish the fight when his manager storms the ring and stops him. Disqualified. Shiba, unconscious on the floor, wins the match. A knockout from the mat. Chains drag down the hallway. Andrea Novzargan appears before Tokugawa, demanding to enter the tournament to clean up the mess. He shatters the links with a simple gesture, recalling the vow he made. He would only be free of them if Mother Russia needed him. In a flashback, the president explains why. Zargan has the strength to flatten a mountain or dig a crater. He feared himself and asked for the chains. In the fighter's lounge, Zargan ignores a fan, receives a taunt from Kolshol, and responds with a punch that sends him flying through the ceiling. Hanayama tries to intervene, but the Russian withstands his blows and knocks him out with a suplex. Jack Hanma's eyes meet his. Zargan stomps the ground, cracking it like a sheet of ice, and heads for the arena. The next fight features Jack Hanma against Kengo Misaki. The Japanese fighter unleashes a flurry of punches so fast he injures his own hand. Hanma doesn't even feel it. He bites his opponent's arm, lifts him, slams him to the ground, and finishes him with an uppercut. Afterwards, he and Zargan face off in the hallway, a promise of a future earthquake. Outside, Baki meets Kozue, who begs him to leave this life behind. Elsewhere, Katsumi confesses his frustration to Doppo for not being able to surpass him, and is told he surpassed his father long ago. The final announcement of the night drops like a bombshell. Doppo Orochi versus Yu Amanai. Doppo and Amanai face off. The young man floats with the motionless leap, dodging and spinning around the ring. Doppo reads his footwork, injures his ankles, and imposes the sledgehammer of old-school karate, a barrage of blows that could topple a mountain. In parallel, in a taxi, Baki listens to Kozue's plea about loving someone who lives on the edge. He takes her to the place where his mother, Emi, died. With the pain of a bleeding wound, he tells his past. Yujiro killed Emi's husband, forced his birth, and she trained him to one day dethrone the ogre. At 13, Baki was defeated. Emi tried to protect him and was crushed in a deadly embrace. The story is a weight Baki decides to carry back to the tournament. In the ring, Amanai turns the tables. He locks in a submission and breaks Doppo's left knee. The master roars back with savage ferocity, breaking free through sheer will. He then uses forbidden techniques, a finger to the eye, the blade of his foot cracking the abdomen, a strike that shatters the jaw. He ends it with a multi-wave gyre, which fractures his opponent's skull. Victory is declared. Amanai, broken, refuses to accept defeat. Yujiro descends, spits contempt at his student's mercy, and kills him by throwing him against the wall. Then he calls out to everyone, 9 against 1. Doppo and Baki take the first step. Other finalists follow. Even the defeated enter the ring. The ogre is surrounded. War has been declared. Yujiro promises to kill everyone and makes good on the threat without any hurry. He dances between Ian McGregor's jabs and knocks him out with one punch. He lifts Roger Harlan and throws him to the other side of the arena. In seconds, he dismantles Richard Filth, Kohei Hatanaka, Kinner Yuzan, kickboxer Rob Robinson, and wrestler Roland Gustaf. It's a choreographed massacre. Kure'a is all that's left, but his patched-up brother, Kolshol, takes his place. Before the beatdown can resume, Andrea Nov Zargon appears. Right behind him, Baki, Dopo, and the rest of the fighters close in. The ogre seethes with rage. Suddenly, tranquilizer darts slice through the air, and a net covers him. Tokugawa's plan, aided by Baki, works for an instant. The beast sleeps. With the chaos contained, the last fight of the round takes place. Shibukawa versus Kolshol. The old man shows off his evasive technique, catches a kick, and breaks the kid's leg. Even so, Kolshol goes for a weird strike at his opponent's eye. The eye shatters, but it's made of glass. In the distraction, Shibukawa throws Kolshol to the ground and wins. The finalists for the third round are announced. Amidst the buzz, Kanji Igari approaches Baki and begs him, "Let me win the next fight." Backstage, Igari kneels, cries, and begs for the win. He says time has run out on his chances and he has nowhere left to run. Baki walks away disgusted. "If you want the title, then fight for it." In the ring, Igari starts strong. Baki turns the tables with a neck crank and he taps out, but it was a trick. As soon as the kid turns his back, he lands a treacherous low blow. From there, the wrestler puts on a show. He controls the fight, taunts Baki, and wins over the crowd, twisting his knee in a hold that would make a statue scream. Baki holds on. The turning point comes when a woman, a lookalike of Baki's mother, appears in the stands. The psychological blow backfires. The kid's incredible flexibility neutralizes Igari's holds, and he even thanks his opponent. The dirty trick helped him focus on his true destiny. Baki decides to beat him at his own game. He creates wrestling moves on the spot, including the new serpent twist, and for good measure, copies the taunt to win over the crowd. Igari loses his cool, attacks sloppily, and Baki nails him to the mat with a brainbuster, planting his head on the canvas. The ref confirms the victory. On the eve of the quarterfinals, Dopo gives his son a chilling ultimatum. If Katsumi loses to Retsukayo, the Shinshinkai dojo will be closed. As Katsumi steps into the ring, a flashback reveals his past. He was a circus boy, the son of an animal tamer. A lion escaped and killed his father. Little Katsumi managed to calm the beast with his bare hands, but it was too late. Back in the present, the fight begins. Katsumi attacks, but Retsu barely moves and throws him out of the ring with humiliating elegance. He declares, Katsumi's modern karate is a sham, and he's going to prove it. Before the next fight, a spectacle in itself, the reserve fighter Andrea Nov Zargon faces a giant anaconda. He matches strength with the serpent, hits it with a suplex, breaks free from its constriction, and kills the beast by stomping on its head. With blood still on the sole of his shoe, Zargon calls out his true target, Baki Hanma. Elsewhere, Jack swallows a cocktail of pills and steroids that warps his body in real time. He enters the ring. The fight begins. Zargon charges forward to attack. He mixes wrestling, boxing, and sheer brutality, overwhelming the blonde fighter, who can't find an opening. The knockout is inevitable.
Zargon is the strongest import this competition has ever seen.
The arena roars as Zargon tosses Baki Hanma from one side to the other, but he doesn't go down. In the audience, Professor Buren remembers the birth of his super sapiens. 30 years ago, everyone laughed at his project to enhance humans, until he saw a demon in the ice, Yujiro Hanma, killing a polar bear with his bare hands. That vision sparked his obsession.
Like a god and staring at me with the eyes of a demon.
Searching for the perfect test subject, he found a skeleton with a will of steel in a kickboxing gym. Baki Hanma. The kid trained 12 hours a day without stopping. Buren pushed him to the limit with whips and pain, watching as he kept on training. Back in the ring, Zargon locks in an impossible back hold, slams Jack to the mat, and leaves him motionless. It looks like the end, but Jack gets up. He takes more punishment, the kind that would dismantle a car and then suddenly plays dead. When Zargon gets close, he just bites. It's disgusting, but it works. The rage makes the Russian vulnerable. In another flash, Buren offers him Formula X4, the drug that grants superhuman strength. Jack accepts, undergoes a painful transformation, and becomes a Colossus. In the present, the Colossus delivers on his promise. Jack lifts Zargon and throws him out of the ring. Victory. On a gurney, the doctors realize the fight took a serious toll on his body. The night ends with one less body and the certainty that Baki Hanma is the closest echo to the ogre's roar. Dopo Orochi is warming up for the quarterfinals, but but Goki Shibukawa arrives at the last minute, laughing at anyone who needs a warm-up. The announcer calls the Great Clash, Jujutsu versus Karate. The two masters face off. Doppo, grateful for the challenge, assumes his classic karate guard, fists clenched. Shibukawa, however, stays completely loose, hands open, in a totally zen vibe. On the first attack, the old man uses Aiki and redirects Doppo's force like it's nothing, throwing him to the ground. The karateka retaliates with the heaven and earth stance, but Shibukawa remains relaxed, dodging everything and even paralyzing his opponent's foot with a pressure point. Doppo figures it out. Any attack he tries will only fuel the old man's Aiki. He stalls the fight until Shibukawa lands a strike to his throat. Doppo responds with a punch carrying a lifetime of training. He remembers the day he understood that the most devastating fist is, ironically, the most natural, the Bodhisattva fist, which has the shape of a baby's fist. With this technique, he lands a direct hit and drops Shibukawa, who admits defeat. Ashamed to have beaten a master, Doppo asks for an honorable death. Shibukawa refuses, knocks him down with a few kicks, and tells him he still has much to live for. Later in the locker room, Doppo announces heartbroken that he will close his dojo. His wife appears to comfort her husband and take him home. While Izo, Suedo, and Kato search for Baki, who has simply vanished from his own semi-final, Retsukayo comes face to face with none other than Yujiro Hanma to measure the scale of the threat. They trade punches on opposite walls, creating craters as if they were made of styrofoam. Retsu declares his dream, to fight the ogre. Yujiro scoffs, says his next target is Baki, and accuses Retsu of being afraid of a kid. His pride wounded, Retsu attacks, but Yujiro dodges with the ease of swatting a fly and leaves, making it clear that Hanma blood is worth more than any Kaio title. In the arena, the Retsu Kaio vs Baki Hanma fight is announced. Retsu enters, but Baki is a no-show until he appears, completely beaten up, covered in cuts and bruises. From a distance, Yujiro reveals the secret. Baki was training by fighting Retsu in his own mind. He proves it by fighting an invisible opponent, injuring himself, and then flooding his body with endorphins to erase the pain and enter a berserker mode. When the real fight begins, Baki returns the favor. He uses Retsu's lotus roll and drops him. Annoyed, Retsu kicks off his weighted shoes, Rock Lee style, and unleashes devastating kicks, striking Baki's throat and sending him to the mat. Yujiro watches, satisfied, certain that the beating will awaken the Hanma blood. After another brutal blow, Baki gets up smiling, ready for round 2. But Baki doesn't give him a chance. He goes all in, finishing with a kick to the face. Shibukawa walks to the arena, looking like a frail old man, remembering his master's lesson. True self-defense isn't learned, it's faced. In the ring, he's a midget next to the Colossus Jack Hanma, who, just for intimidation, picks up a coconut and crushes the shell with his jaw. Jack's first punch is like a falling building, but the old man dodges as if he's bending time. Then, Shibukawa resorts to a dirty trick, a stream of water right into Jack's tear duct, momentarily blinding the giant. In that opening, he takes the big man down and stomps on his neck, but Jack isn't normal. He bites Shibukawa's foot, gets up, gives a mocking bow, and in a final insult, bites the master's arm. This is the Aiki Fuji, a bite that seals Aiki and prevents the redirection technique from working. Even in pain, Shibukawa resists, sits on the ground in the seated defense, and lures Jack into a trap, countering every attack. But the Hanma's superhuman persistence eventually breaks through the barrier. A final blow ends the fight. Defeated, Shibukawa admits he's never faced anyone like Jack. In the hallway, Dr. Kureya warns him that the drugs will kill Jack if he continues at this pace. Jack simply ignores him, beats the doctor in a test of strength, and moves on, obsessed with the duel against his brother Baki. Tokugawa announces the grand final of the Maximum Tournament, the battle that will determine the strongest man on Earth, Baki Hanma versus Jack. While the arena roars, Baki is chilling in a room, eating and relaxing in Kozue's lap. Suedo and Kato show up to give him the news. Jack is back on the juice. Baki isn't fazed. He says his entire life has been a journey to become the strongest, a path laid out by his mother. Back in the arena, the announcer drops a bombshell. The opponent is none other than Jack Hanma, Baki's older brother. They face off, shake hands, embrace. The bell rings. The war of the Hanma brothers begins. Jack admits his brother has evolved and promises an all-out fight worthy of the Hanma blood. The combat starts fiercely, with punches and kicks at an absurd speed. The scene cuts to a hallway. Jack runs into Kozue, introduces himself, and lays on some shameless flirting, saying that if she were his girlfriend, he'd quit fighting just to be with her. Back in the ring, the warm-up is over. Baki gives the word, Jack agrees and changes his stance. He gets on all fours, low, like a lion about to pounce. He lunges and bites Baki's shoulder, but takes a punch to the mouth that shatters his teeth. Baki responds with a kick to the temple and sinks in a rear naked choke. Just when it seems the fight is over, Jack simply rises and by flexing his neck muscles, breaks the hold. Baki turns pale. He's seen this before. A flashback takes us to Vietnam, where a 16-year-old Yujiro, the walking nuclear bomb, was destroying entire units. In the present, Baki understands everything. Jack copied their father's technique. With restrained tears and a new determination, the brothers prepare for the next round. A flashback takes us to a war-torn country. A general is celebrating a victory until Yujiro shows up and ends his party in seconds. Later, the ogre invades the base where the general is recovering, knocking down soldiers like dominoes and confronting a captain who already knows his reputation. They shake hands, which is a signal for the soldiers to open fire, but Yujiro uses the man as a human shield and vanishes. Inside, he finds a woman, Diane, who confesses the plan to blow him up with a massive bomb. The army attacks, Yujiro grabs her and survives the explosion as if it were a summer breeze. He then confronts a UN official, makes it clear that everyone is afraid of him, and defeats him. As he leaves, the muscles on his back contort into the face of a demon.
Tell me, what is it you want from all this death? What is it?
Back in the present, Baki and Jack are destroying each other in the final. A blow severs Baki's artery. He has minutes to live. He refuses to give up. Baki blinds his brother and unleashes a sonic strike, a barrage of blows that breaks the sound barrier. Consumed by rage, Jack's body swells to a monstrous size. The two charge forward and throw one final simultaneous punch, straight to each other's faces. At the height of the battle, Jack's body, still called Hanma here, collapses from the X4 drug. The doctor storms the ring to stop the fight, but Jack attacks him and throws him away, deliriously claiming he's become a walking miracle and doesn't need drugs anymore. The fight resumes with Jack unleashing a storm of blows, leaving Baki bloodied. At his limit, Baki manages to lock in a rear naked choke. The strain is so intense that the muscles on his back deform, drawing the face of a demon, the famous Hanma mark. With a shout, he finishes Jack off with a rear naked choke, leaving him unconscious.
We have a winner!
They both collapse, but Baki is declared the winner. Tokugawa presents the belt, but Baki refuses it and offers it to Jack. In a sign of respect, Jack raises Baki's arm for the crowd, acknowledging the true champion. Later, in a dark alley, Yujiro finds a broken Jack Hanma and humiliates him for losing twice in one day. Meanwhile, Baki returns to the empty arena, grabs a handful of sand, and smiles, bringing this chapter to a close once and for all. In the hospital, Captain Stridham recalls the beating he took from Yujiro and recounts the US plan after being driven out of Indochina by an 18-year-old ogre. Stridham informs his superiors of the total failure. The government activates its contingency plan. To fight a monster, you unleash another. An official visits a maximum security prison in Arizona and recruits Biscuit Oliva, the Unchained. The mission is to eliminate a drug lord, a target that will put him on a collision course with Yujiro. But when the ogre arrives at the mansion, Oliva has already cleared the place. The two face off, but Yujiro refuses the fight, preferring to save his new toy for later. He effortlessly dodges the Colossus's attacks and disappears. And in a move that redefines power on the planet, Yujiro simply walks into the White House and through sheer intimidation alone forces the president to sign a non-aggression pact, proving he is above any nation. Picture this, you're in class, and suddenly your teacher and almost all the students start shaking like a leaf, all except one guy, Baki Hanma, who's taking a deep nap at his desk. Later, some bullies try to pick a fight with him, but just one look at Baki fills them with such an instinctual fear that they run off without a word. All this power catches the attention of Tokugawa, an old man who promotes a top-secret underground fighting arena. Tokugawa invites Baki for a chat and drops a bizarre theory called synchronicity. Basically, completely unrelated things in different parts of the world change at the same time, and the example he gives is bone-chilling. He reveals that 5 of the world's most dangerous death row inmates have all escaped from their prisons at the exact same moment. In the USA, Kaio Dorian survived a hanging, killed the guards, and declared he wants to taste defeat. In England, a man named Doyle survived the electric chair and uttered the very same phrase. In a prison inside a missile silo in Russia, Sikorsky simply scaled the smooth 100-meter walls to escape. In an underwater prison, the giant Speck escaped after holding his breath for over 5 minutes underwater. And in Japan, Yanagi, a master of the poison hand, shattered a bulletproof glass cell with a vacuum palm strike like a real-life Hadouken. All 5, after escaping impossible prisons, said they want to taste defeat and are heading for Tokyo. And they're not here for sightseeing. They're here for an all-out war, because these guys are masters of shadowy martial arts, and they don't waste any time. One of them, Doyle, immediately finds a kickboxer named Rob Robinson and defeats him using blades hidden in his clothes and metal implants in his body.
What the hell's wrong with you, man? Metal implants?
Meanwhile, a few delinquents are roughing up some local thugs, trying to find out where Baki is. The thugs lead Baki to them, and one of the suckers pulls a gun. Cool as a cucumber, Baki disarms them all, but the party's cut short by the arrival of the 5th and most bizarre of them all, Speck. He grabs the gun, shoots himself in the mouth just to taste the gunpowder. He offers Baki a handshake, which Baki accepts. Speck plays a cruel trick. It was actually the severed hand of a dead person. While Baki is in shock, Speck gives him a savage beatdown until the police arrive. To top it all off, we see that Baki's father, Yujiro Hanma, known as the strongest creature on Earth, is just watching everything with a front row seat. And the final convict, Yanagi, pays a little visit to the legendary master Goki Shibukawa, calls the old man weak, and lunges at him. An old man, Dorian, walks into the Shinshinkai dojo, shoes and all. Katsumi Orochi, the head of the dojo, steps up to confront him. Dorian's response? He takes off his shoes and uses them as weapons to attack Katsumi. Things get ugly. Dorian continues with brutal strikes, shoves a finger in Katsumi's eye, and even tries to strangle him with his own black belt. Talk about disrespect. Retsu Kaio appears to save the day and challenges the intruder. Dorian pretends to cry, but it's just a trick to use a hidden wire to slash Retsu's face. After taking a powerful kick, Dorian throws a liquid on the floor, sets it on fire, and makes his escape in the confusion. A top-tier villain. Meanwhile, at school, Baki is taking a physical fitness test. The guy's abilities are so absurd that during the 100-meter dash, he carves a crater in the track. He throws a ball so high it disappears into the clouds and leaps clear over the entire sandpit. On the pull-up bar, he rips the iron right out of the wall, but during the 1,500-meter run, Baki simply collapses from a cramp. Apparently, his body is built for brawling, not marathons. Later, pro wrestler Kanji Igari and judoka Mount Tilba are having dinner with Tokugawa when Sikorsky, the blonde Russian, shows up out of nowhere and defeats them both like it's nothing. Tokugawa then reveals that all 5 convicts have been drawn to his underground arena. We see Dorian, Yanagi, Doyle, and Speck arriving. On the other side, Baki, Doppo, Retsu Kaio, Goki, and Hanayama also gather. Tokugawa welcomes them, explaining they were lured by the scent of battle. Baki steps forward, ready to fight. Now things are really gonna heat up. In a dark arena, 2 groups of fighters face off like it's a championship final. An old man, Tokugawa, lays out the situation. 5 of the world's most dangerous death row convicts have simultaneously escaped their prisons and come to Tokyo. Their goal? Something simple: to taste defeat. To welcome this crew, Tokugawa has assembled 5 of Japan's greatest martial artists, including the recent Maximum Tournament champion, Baki Hanma. The prisoners think tournament fighting is just a rehearsal, and Tokugawa agrees. Real combat has no time, no place, and no rules. Basically, the fight has already begun. On the streets, the convict Dorian ambushes karate master Doppo Orochi with a fire attack. Doppo, cool as ever, extinguishes the flames with his circular defense. But Doppo isn't playing around and mercilessly pummels him. Elsewhere, the convict Sikorsky is captured by Hanayama's gang. He survives a few gunshots thanks to a bulletproof vest and demolishes Hanayama's men. The boss is so impressed that he simply admits defeat and surrenders. Meanwhile, Baki is on a date with his classmate classmate, Kozue. When some punks try to mug them, Baki dispatches them all with a single move, like something out of an action movie. The two walk away hand in hand, but little do they know that a grinning brute named Spec is watching them from the shadows, just waiting for his chance to ruin their moment. Kozue tells Baki she can't stop thinking about the kiss he gave her before a fight. In a flashback, we see Kozue confronting Baki, trying to understand his world of brutal combat. She reminds him that every fighter he defeats has people who care about them and suffer. Baki, unable to explain it properly, plants a kiss on her and says that fighting is the only path he has. Back in the present, Baki finishes his explanation. The kiss wasn't because he was afraid of dying, but because she's the only person he can be himself with. Just as they embrace, the mood is shattered by the arrival of the convict Spec. But before Spec can do anything, Yakuza boss Hanayama appears out of nowhere and blocks his path. Spec is amused, recognizing Hanayama as another outlaw. Hanayama removes his suit, revealing a giant scarred body and a massive back tattoo. A narrator explains that the tattoo is the Standing Man, a symbol passed down to the head of the Hanayama family. His version is unique. He earned the scars by single-handedly destroying the rival clan that killed his predecessor because, in his mind, a Scarlet Sentinel is incomplete. Spec, finding the tattoo beautiful, charges in, and the two exchange a storm of devastating blows. Meanwhile, in New York, a police officer discovers that the Statue of Liberty is cracking, with the damage forming a giant hand made of countless punch marks. Back at the fight, Spec unleashes his apnea rush, a flurry of punches thrown without breathing, leaving no opening for a counterattack. Despite the beating, Hanayama endures and lands a punch that sends Spec flying. When Hanayama asks if he's had enough, Spec agrees, only to shove bullets into Hanayama's mouth and slam his jaw shut with force, triggering an explosion. Baki and Kozue watch the end of the fight between a battered Hanayama and Spec. After a quick exchange of blows, Hanayama throws Spec into the air, where he is struck by lightning and defeated. Yes, lightning. Hanayama then simply drags Spec's body to a police station and drops him there, leaving the officers speechless. The inspector offers medical help, but Hanayama refuses and leaves in a car with a sergeant. Suddenly, the car is stopped and flipped by Spec, who in just a few minutes managed to escape, arm himself, and track them down. The guy is like a real-life T-1000. Spec pummels the fallen Hanayama, shoots him multiple times, and stomps on his head using the pavement as an anvil. Even so, Hanayama survives by turning his head at the last second. Spec uses a flashbang grenade, but not even that stops Hanayama, who remains standing, firm and resolute. Unarmed, Spec tries a rear naked choke. Hanayama counters not with a technique, but with his legendary grip strength, the vice grip. He grabs Spec's arm and makes it explode. In a final attempt, Spec jams a finger into Hanayama's ear, but Hanayama doesn't flinch. He simply counters, bringing the fight to an end once and for all. At the hospital, doctors see that Spec has aged dramatically, now looking his actual 97 years. The theory is that upon finally achieving his dream of tasting defeat, he lost his will to live. Meanwhile, at school, Baki's teacher is lecturing about how intelligence trumps strength when a new red-haired student jumps through the classroom window, knocks out the teacher, and goes after Baki. Baki kicks the school desk straight at Doyle. Doyle calmly pulls out a box cutter and a compass, giving a practical lesson on the difference between a ring match and a street fight with weapons. Having zero interest in causing trouble at school, Baki simply opens a window and leaps several stories to the ground, landing perfectly and taking off as if it were nothing. Relieved to have escaped the brawl, Baki ducks into an alley only to run into another inmate, Yanagi. The new foe attacks with a pair of bladed whips, but Baki manages to dodge by focusing on his opponent's movements, not the blur of the blades. The fight is interrupted by the Aiki master, Shibukawa, who throws a kettle of cold water on Yanagi. While the man is distracted, Shibukawa uses his Aiki technique to effortlessly slam them to the ground. A narrator explains that Yanagi is a practitioner of the Way of the Void, a martial art so bizarre it has worn down his teeth due to the incredible force of his bite. Back in the alley, Yanagi lands a powerful blow, injuring Shibukawa's arm, but Yanagi reveals his true specialty is poison and pulls out a weapon resembling a tiger's claw. Shibukawa and Baki team up to fight him in a 2-on-1 battle. During the chaotic fight, Yanagi explains his ultimate technique, creating a vacuum pocket in his palm with less than 6% oxygen. He calls it the poison hand. He places this hand over Baki's mouth and nose, and Baki instantly passes out from oxygen deprivation and collapses. After their defeats, Baki, Doppo, Retsu, Shibukawa, and Hanayama get an earful from Tokugawa. He tears into them for getting beaten by the inmates, calling them spoiled and useless. Hanayama becomes enraged and grabs Tokugawa, but eventually lets go. Baki stands up, agrees with the scolding, and starts to leave. Suddenly, the inmate Dorian appears, having taken out the guards outside. He simply picks up a bucket of gasoline he brought with him and douses himself in it. Katsumi doesn't hesitate and lunges at Dorian, kicking him and flicking a lighter, turning Dorian into a human torch. When the flames die down, Dorian is still standing, badly burned but alive. Doppo explains the karateka's philosophy, to fight empty-handed, using only what one has in their own body as a weapon. A new fighter, Kato, arrives and faces Dorian. He uses a thin wire to slice off Dorian's ear. As Dorian falls, Doppo kicks him. Dorian then attacks Katsumi and Kato, using the same wire trick to cut them as well. While the fighters are distracted, Dorian reveals a grenade hidden in his mouth. He pulls the pin, and the entire building explodes. Later, the police question Tokugawa, who was thrown clear of the blast and is still dazed. The other fighters and Dorian have vanished. Elsewhere, a scorched Dorian emerges from a manhole, like a horror movie villain, who refuses to die. He finds an alley, scares off a man who runs away screaming, and then climbs back down into another manhole, descending into the sewers. Kato finally confronts the convict Dorian. The villain covers his fists in broken glass and invites Kato to do the same, but Kato refuses, saying he prefers his own methods. The fight begins, and Dorian's overwhelming strength is immediately apparent. After a brutal exchange, Dorian taunts Kato, calling him a disappointment to his master, Doppo Orochi. Enraged, Kato throws off his jacket and attacks with everything he has, but Dorian retaliates by smashing a bottle in his face. As Dorian begins to sing opera, Kato is massacred, but then the tables suddenly turn. Kato dodges Dorian's attacks and unleashes a furious combo, beating the old man until he begs for mercy. As Kato roars in victory, we discover it was all a hallucination. Dorian, completely unharmed, explains that he used hypnosis, exploiting Kato's desire to win. The real Dorian then uses a thinner wire to injure Kato, leaving him on the brink of death. At the Shinshinkai dojo, an enraged Katsumi Orochi lists Kato's catastrophic injuries to the members, from a fractured skull to broken limbs. He declares that all 1 million members of Shinshinkai will hunt Dorian down. Meanwhile, Dorian is calmly dining at a restaurant, where the manager reveals himself to be a Shinshinkai member. Dorian is then trapped in a taxi surrounded by a massive blockade of cars, trucks, and emergency vehicles, all driven by Shinshinkai members. They take him to an abandoned amusement park, where a crowd of fighters awaits. Dorian, unfazed, defeats the first opponent with a single kick. He's greeted by a manager dressed as a clown, which immediately sets a bizarre tone. After a handshake, Dorian decides it's time to have some fun and starts riding the attractions, laughing like a maniac on a carousel and teacups. He's like a child in a killer's body. But the party is cut short by Atsushi Suedo, a black belt and former training partner of Kato, who's out for revenge. The fight kicks off, and Suedo even lands a few hits, but Dorian turns the fight into a chase through the park, ending on a roller coaster. It's like a horror movie scene set in Disneyland. At the top of the highest climb, Dorian vanishes and reappears behind Suedo, striking just as the coaster begins its descent. He uses a metal wire to tether himself to a pole and catch Suedo, who is thrown from the car. Dorian asks if he's truly ready to die, then drops them both to the ground. Lying beaten, Suedo listens to Dorian's taunts, but the fight isn't over. Out of nowhere, Katsumi, Doppo, and Retsu Kaio show up to crash the psychopath's party. Retsu is disgusted by Dorian's dirty tricks and challenges him. Then comes a flashback. In the past, Retsu's master denied him a test to become a Kaio, saying he wasn't good enough. As proof, the master showed him an entire cavern carved out of rock in a single night by another Kaio from the west. And guess who it was? Dorian himself. Back in the present, Retsu, Doppo, and Katsumi prepare to face the legend. Dorian says he's heard of Retsu's incredible talent and challenges him to a fight, but Retsu refuses, stating that the Kung Fu Code forbids fights between students of the same school. At the perfect moment, Katsumi and Doppo start arguing over who has the right to fight Dorian. Doppo claims it's his turn, since Dorian took his hand. He takes the opportunity to brag about being the Tiger Killer, a legend born after he killed a 550-pound Siberian tiger with his bare hands. The fight between Doppo and Dorian begins. After a lightning-fast exchange of blows, Dorian shatters the cast on Doppo's hand. But then comes the plot twist. Doppo reveals that his own hand is a prosthetic, reattached by an underground doctor after an old fight. He puts the prosthetic prosthetic back on and the fight resumes. Dorian throws a vial of acid, but the fight doesn't stop. Suddenly, Dorian is on the ground, begging for his life. As Doppo moves in for the finish, Dorian gets up and Retsu realizes everything. Doppo has been hypnotized. Retsu explains that Dorian is using Doppo's own desire for victory against him. In Doppo's mind, he's winning easily, but in reality, he's taking a severe beating. Retsu claps his hands, breaking the hypnosis. Doppo finally regains full consciousness and lands a solid kick straight into Dorian. Elsewhere, Baki and Kozue are on a bench, and she worries he'll get tired of her. Baki reassures her, and the two kiss. From a distance, Yujiro Hanma watches them with a suspicious smirk on his face. Doppo Orochi faces Dorian again, blocking his blade attacks with his bare hands. The man is a wall. He kicks Dorian's hand away, and entering a berserker rage, Doppo unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks, shattering Dorian's ribs and ultimately defeating him. Doppo orders them to bring in the battered Kato in a wheelchair. A doctor tries to stop him, but Doppo insists that Kato will finish the fight. Driven by pure rage, a bandaged Kato rises from his wheelchair and goes after an already exhausted Dorian. However, rage alone isn't enough, and Kato collapses right then and there, still on his feet. Later, doctors examining Dorian's arm x-ray discover a small explosive implanted in his hand. The guy had a bomb up his sleeve the whole time. In the ambulance, Dorian's mind has regressed. He's now in a childlike state, thinking the Tokyo Tower is a giant piece of candy. Retsukayo explains that his wounded pride caused his brain to crash and promises to buy him a mountain of candy. Meanwhile, Baki walks Kozue home. He gets all flustered about inviting her in, and she runs off, telling him to wait 10 minutes. As Baki waits, Kozue hears a knock on her bedroom window, but sees no one. When she turns around, the prisoner Sikorsky is there. He grabs her and covers her mouth, turning the romantic scene into a horror movie. He takes her and her mother hostage, but Kozue has faith in her hero and screams for Baki, and it actually works. Baki smashes through the window like the Hulk and unleashes hell on Sikorsky. The fight is brutal, but the Russian is slippery. He uses his jacket as a decoy, escapes through another window, and kidnaps Kozue in the process, disappearing in a car. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, Inspector Sonoda is in a meeting with a real-life Interpol to discuss the fugitives. With Speck and Doyle already captured, they're racking their brains to find the other three. Then, a former KGB agent drops a truth bomb. To catch monsters, you need another monster. He speaks of a mysterious inmate in an Arizona penitentiary, a man so powerful he's monitored by satellite and lives in a luxury suite. His name? Mr. Unchained. The FBI director gets annoyed and reveals the beast's name, Biscuit Oliva. Sonoda travels to the prison, which looks more like a palace. There, he meets the man himself, Oliva, a mountain of pure muscle. In the middle of their conversation, Oliva gets a call. A maniac named Jeff Marks has taken hostages and is demanding his presence. Oliva accepts the hunt and goes by helicopter. He enters the building and confronts Marks, a disfigured ex-cop seeking revenge. The guy unloads a shotgun into Oliva's chest, but the bullets bounce off like marbles. In disbelief, he tries a katana, which also doesn't leave a scratch. With a single punch, Oliva sends Marks flying out the window and off the building. End of story. After a man is killed with a single punch, the police arrive on the scene to find Biscuit Oliva, who just took a shotgun blast to the gut without even flinching. We learn that this luxury inmate works for the police, hunting other criminals. Back in his cell, which is basically a 5-star hotel room, he eats a feast of steak and wine, and the bullet wound simply vanishes. He explains to Detective Sonoda that his motivation for hunting the fugitives is pure resentment. He can't stand that they have more freedom than he does. Oliva and Sonoda head to Tokyo. In the middle of the highway, Oliva casually rips the car door off and starts walking, saying he's going to visit a friend. Meanwhile, Sikorsky is still holding Baki's girlfriend hostage in a hotel, and who shows up to the party? Yujiro Hanma, Baki's father. When Sikorsky questions Yujiro's plan, he flips a table with a finger flick. Before a fight can break out, Oliva arrives and grabs Sikorsky's hand. At that exact moment, Baki and his friend Katsumi burst through the door. Baki is possessed with rage at seeing Kozue in danger and attacks Sikorsky, punching him through the hotel window in a 27-story fall. But the Russian survives by using his fingertips to grip the building's wall and slow his descent. He climbs back up, only to get beaten down again. Baki continues the assault and defeats him brutally. Baki challenges Oliva to a test of strength. Sikorsky, already recovered, attacks Oliva, but his punches have no effect. Oliva weathers the storm and then returns fire with a flurry of his own, knocking the Russian out cold. Even after being thrown from a building, Sikorsky survived the fall, but then the giant biscuit Oliva, also known as Mr. Unchained, arrives and basically confiscates the Russian from Inspector Sonoda, mocking the police for failing to capture the fugitives. Oliva even drops a gem on Baki. His incredible strength comes from the power of love. Can you believe it? Later, at a police station, Oliva is researching another fugitive, Hector Doyle. A beautiful officer brings him coffee, but it's a trap. The officer is Doyle in disguise. He reveals the coffee was laced with a powerful hallucinogen and attacks Oliva with a hidden blade. Oliva collapses, and Doyle stabs him repeatedly, but Oliva's muscle mass is so dense it acts like armor. He recovers instantly, grabs Doyle by the ankle, and starts using him to demolish the walls and ceiling. When other officers hear the commotion, Oliva locks the door and lies through his teeth, saying he just knocked over a chair. Just as he's about to finish Doyle, Sonoda enters with the Aiki master, Goki Shibukawa. Oliva becomes curious about the martial art and challenges the old man. They shake hands, and Oliva tries to crush his hand with all his might. Using his Aiki technique, Shibukawa effortlessly overpowers the giant, sending him to the floor, screaming in pain. While everyone is distracted by the scene, the injured Doyle escapes through a maintenance tunnel and leaps onto a moving subway train. Biscuit Oliva storms into a judo dojo. His mission is to walk out with a black belt if he manages to crush everyone inside, and he starts strong, tossing judokas into the air like rag dolls using pure, raw strength. But the dojo master, Sonoda, rains on his parade, saying his technique is so crude it doesn't even score points. The men aren't landing on their backs as the rules require. Annoyed, Oliva continues his show of brutality until an elderly master, Shibukawa, decides to step in. When Oliva charges with full force, Shibukawa uses a technique so fast and precise that, in the blink of an eye, he shatters the giant's wrist. Shocked and impressed, Oliva admits defeat, and as a sign of respect, the old man gives him the black belt. Meanwhile, in another dojo, Kolshol demonstrates his bizarre tendon-cutting technique to Katsumi Orochi, slicing through basketballs and paper with just his hands. He's itching to join the fight against the convicts to avenge an old defeat. Speaking of the convicts, we see Doyle, who is basically a human Swiss Army knife, filled with hidden blades and even a mini explosive, which he uses to blow up a colonel's beret just for fun. Kolshol wastes no time, invades Doyle's hotel, and the fight begins. It's a quick and brutal beatdown. Kolshol breaks Doyle's jaw and incapacitates him with strikes to the throat and elbow. To wrap things up, Baki is in the middle of a heavy conversation with Kozue, who feels left out. The argument is interrupted by Hanayama, who offers Baki the chance to trade Kozue for any other woman. When Kozue herself tells him to accept, Baki snaps and yells at her, and Hanayama simply throws our protagonist into the river. Back at the hotel, Doyle reveals an arsenal of blades hidden in his hands, elbows, and feet, but instead of attacking, he remains perfectly still, waging a psychological war. Kolshol can't take the pressure. He loses his patience and charges in. Doyle simply triggers an explosive concealed in his chest, blasting Kolshol across the room. The general watching complains that it's unfair, but Doyle shrugs, saying that in the fight for victory, anything goes. He confesses that he only wants to be the strongest in the world, but he also dreams of tasting true defeat. Far away, Baki Hanma is lying in bed, thinking about Kozue's words on love being more important than strength. Suddenly, she knocks on his door, confesses she can't stop thinking about him, and he says he feels the same. She leaves, only to sneak back in seconds later. Kozue begins to undress and gets into bed with him, while Baki, his heart racing, pretends to be asleep, but right at the crucial moment, he freezes, paralyzed by the sight of his monstrous father standing by the bed. The man mocks Baki's fear, then gives him a bizarre piece of advice: to use the night to grow stronger. And just like that, he vanishes into thin air. In the morning at a restaurant, Retsukayo watches in shock as a massive man devours an entire roasted pig in a matter of seconds. Retsu recognizes him. It's Jack Hanma, Baki's half-brother, who has grown several inches. A flashback reveals Jack underwent an agonizing agonizing surgery to lengthen his bones. To top it all off, Retsu and Doyle cross paths in an elevator. The tension is maxed out, but instead of fighting, they decide to go for a drink at a bar. The convict, Doyle, gets completely wasted. Just in time for Retsu Kaio to confront him, Doyle sets himself on fire, but Retsu puts out the flames, only to set him on fire again with flammable liquid. After extinguishing the fire, Retsu opens a coat full of bladed weapons and essentially nails Doyle to the wall. Doyle manages to escape into an alley, but Retsu follows. Before he can deliver the final blow, the giant Jack appears, warning that he'll kill Doyle later, but without using weapons. After Jack vanishes, Doyle tries one last attack, using a hidden lighter to create a flamethrower. Retsu dodges and knocks him down with a staff, but as Retsu moves to finish him, Jack reappears and injects a syringe into Retsu's neck, knocking him out instantly. Saved by the enemy of his enemy, Doyle scares off two thieves trying to rob the unconscious Retsu. The next morning, he wakes up and realizes it was Retsu himself who saved his life. A flashback shows Retsu carrying Doyle, stealing a motorcycle, and even running across the water of a canal to get him to the Shinshinkai dojo. It's then that Doyle realizes the students of the dojo gave their blood to save him. After eating a meal prepared by Retsu, Doyle goes to the dojo, faces the students led by Katsumi, and announces he is there to kill them all. He puts on a fireproof suit, fills the room with cake flour, and triggers a massive dust explosion. As Doyle emerges from the rubble, he's confronted by a man with an eye patch, Doppo Orochi, who is furious not because of the destruction, but because the explosion damaged a mural of his face on the building's wall. Doppo Orochi finds Doyle in a dark alley, like a scene from a gangster movie, and starts mocking his recent losses to Retsu and Oliva. He proposes a clean, hands-only fight, but it's a total trick. As soon as Doyle prepares himself, Doppo attacks with a full-power karate strike, beating the convict until he passes out. Doyle wakes up in the Shinshinkai dojo and comes face-to-face with Katsumi Orochi, now with his face covered in burn scars. A gift left by Doyle himself. Katsumi warns that he'll keep hitting him until he admits defeat. Furious, Doyle charges, but Katsumi easily dodges and knocks him down. A bizarre cycle of violence begins. Every time Doyle wakes up and refuses to give up, Katsumi beats him down again. After a devastating final blow that nearly destroys Doyle's face, Katsumi sees that his opponent's unconscious body still refuses to yield. Unable to strike him anymore, Katsumi admits his own defeat, feeling a strange sense of release. He even tells his student to inform Doyle that he won. Meanwhile, Baki receives a note from Kozue and sprints through the city at superhuman speed, searching for her. After waiting on a train and wandering the city, Kozue arrives at Baki's house to find him there, exhausted. He confesses he doesn't care about being the strongest in the world. He just wants to be stronger than his father, and the two embrace. To close, we meet an old man named Kunimatsu, who demonstrates a vacuum palm technique, making a bowling ball stick to his hand, and mentions that his most talented student was a man named Yanagi. And then the old man explains to Tokugawa how the poison hand is created. The process is disgusting. You mix poisonous insects and plants and repeatedly dip your hand in this concoction and then in an antidote. This agonizing training, repeated day and night, eventually turns the hand purple, making its touch fatal. It's basically a toxic superpower. Meanwhile, in a maximum security prison, the convict Sikorsky manages to escape. The head guard, Sonoda, explains that the prison is a 150-meter tall tower with no stairs or doors on the top floor. The only conclusion is that Sikorsky scaled the concrete wall using just his fingertips, like a Russian, and seriously pissed off Spider-Man. Elsewhere, Baki and his girlfriend Kozue have a very intimate night. Since Baki has spent a decade focused only on fighting, his way of making love is pure instinct. The next day, Baki and Kozue leave the house and are confronted by Yanagi, the master of the poison hand. To protect Kozue, Baki takes the fight to a vacant lot. Yanagi uses a whip strike, a technique that makes the arm fluid and boneless, tearing Baki's shoulder and leg. But Baki reveals that his father, Yujiro Hanma, taught him the same technique, only he dismissed it as a girly slap. Baki then uses his own whip strike and simply runs over Yanagi.
Oh, and then...
The moment Baki stands over his defeated opponent, Sikorsky arrives. The two convicts realize that to beat the new and powerful Baki, they'll have to fight together. Baki now faces the inmate duo, Yanagi and Sikorsky. His girlfriend, Kozue, tries to intervene, but Baki dismisses her, overconfident that he'll win, and he wasn't kidding. Baki defeats them both effortlessly with a series of slaps so powerful they're left in shock. Yanagi realizes his poison hand is useless, and deduces that Baki's newfound strength comes from his recent intimacy with Kozue. Yes, the power of love is real here. To confirm this bizarre theory, Hanayama shows up out of nowhere. Baki tells Hanayama he's satisfied with his current power, as long as it's enough to protect Kozue. As Yanagi and Sikorsky try to get up, Baki grabs Kozue and flees, leaving the two brutes crying in humiliation on the floor. Far away, Katsumi Orochi helps a grateful Doyle board a cargo ship to escape the country. As a farewell gift, Katsumi teaches Doyle a karate punch, the Seiken, and gives him his black belt. However, once on the ship, Doyle is ambushed by Yanagi, who blinds him and attacks him with a blade. However, he jumps off the boat, escaping the attack with his life. To close out the episode, we see a flurry of events. Alexander appears in a wheelchair, mentally shattered by his defeat. At the Russian prison, a professional mountain climber declares that Sikorsky's escape route is impossible for a normal human being. And in a public restroom, Sikorsky is brutally beaten by Jack Hanma. The final scene shows the two of them cornering a terrified man in a phone booth. Inside a phone booth, Sikorsky is face to face with the giant Jack and another maniac. Full of swagger, Sikorsky claims the tight space is a disadvantage for Jack, not him. And then all hell breaks loose inside, with Sikorsky using his bizarre finger strength and agility to attack. The booth is knocked over, tumbling down the street like a soda can, but the fight continues until Sikorsky and the other guy are knocked out, twisted together inside. Jack emerges from the booth victorious, only to come face to face with Kanji Igari and his cronies. A quick flashback reveals why. Sikorsky had previously humiliated and beaten Kanji in a restaurant. Driven by revenge, the mobster's men simply pick up the entire phone booth with Sikorsky still inside and toss it into the back of a truck. It's the weirdest beatdown delivery you'll ever see. Sikorsky wakes up mid-transport, and when the doors open, he's in for a surprise. He's in the center of the Tokyo Dome's underground arena, with a frenzied crowd screaming. And who's waiting for him? Jack Hanma himself. The arena's organizer Tokugawa appears and announces that the fight is no rules, bare knuckle. Sikorsky accepts the challenge and prepares for round 2. The fight begins, pitting Jack's raw power against Sikorsky's speed. After being slammed into a wooden pillar, Sikorsky tries to use a nail as a weapon, but Jack, in an insane display of power, catches the nail with his teeth, ties it into a knot, and spits it out. The brawl is interrupted by the arrival of Gaia, a master of environmental combat. He immediately makes his presence known. He kicks sand into Sikorsky's eyes, uses another handful of sand to create a shotgun-like blast, and finishes with a sonic scream that drops Sikorsky to the ground. Gaia then explains that, in his hands, anything becomes a deadly weapon. With the man defenseless, Gaia unleashes a relentless flurry of blows. Moments later, he says that was just a warm-up. To prove his point, Gaia conjures a sandstorm out of nowhere, engulfing the entire arena. Sikorsky is lost in the dust, unable to find Gaia, who uses the sand for perfect camouflage, like a desert ninja. He taunts and attacks Sikorsky from his blind spots, finishing with a well-aimed kick to the groin. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the elderly master Shibukawa receives a written challenge from a certain Yanagi. This reminds him of a phantom gate he saw before being defeated by Jack Hanma. In a park, another fighter, Izo Motobe, is also challenged by the same Yanagi. Back in the arena, Gaia blinds Sikorsky with sand again and begins a 10-second countdown, attacking with each number. Terrified, Sikorsky begs to be let out and forfeits the match. Later, Motobe defeats Yanagi in the park using various weapons, including a chain and a blade. But out of nowhere, Yujiro Hanma appears. Motobe tries to confront him, but Yujiro, without the slightest effort, shatters his sword with his bare hands, leaving Motobe and Yanagi defeated on the ground. Yujiro Hanma faces the defeated Yanagi, who, despite being completely broken, refuses to admit defeat. As Motobe and an old master watch, Yujiro grows bored with the man's stubbornness and decides to end the conversation. He delivers a single devastating blow that knocks Yanagi out cold, leaving him unconscious in a pool of blood. Yujiro walks away, leaving everyone in shock. Meanwhile, in a seaside cave, Doyle, the fugitive who now has only one eye, is found by the gigantic biscuit Oliva. Doyle attempts a surprise attack, but Oliva, who already knew the man used a potent poison, easily dominates the situation and knocks him out.
A very potent one, too.
A quick montage reveals the fates of the other convicts. All have been defeated. Things take a serious turn when we see Kozue, worried about Baki. He has lost his appetite and an absurd amount of muscle mass. She takes him to a hospital where Dr. Kuraya gives them the worst possible news. Baki has been poisoned by Yanagi. His condition is critical, and modern medicine can do nothing. Devastated, Kozue leaves the hospital and is comforted by a young fighter, Muhammad Ali Jr., who gives her a good luck charm before asking for directions. Ali Jr. goes to a gym to fight alongside a champion boxer, Dave. Using unconventional movements, he dodges every attack and knocks the champion out with a single, perfectly timed counterpunch. Back at the hospital, Baki has vanished from his bed. He has returned home and tells a crying Kozue that this is a battle he must fight alone. To cap it all off, Muhammad Ali Jr. comes face to face with none other than Yujiro Hanma. Muhammad Ali approaches a reporter and asks about a certain Yujiro Hanma, which leaves the journalist terrified. The reporter begins recounting the legend of the boxer Muhammad Ali, how he became a celebrity, lost his title for refusing to go to war, became a civil rights icon, and made a miraculous comeback. The journalist then asks why Ali wants to know about Yujiro, and the old man starts to tell a story from 1976. Back then, Ali was preparing for a no-rules fight against Antonio Igari. During a night run, his training partners simply vanished one by one in true horror movie fashion. Alone, he sensed a sinister presence, and when he turned around, he came face to face with Yujiro Hanma. For the first time in his life, the great Ali felt a real threat and raised his guard. Yujiro said that Ali's true calling wasn't boxing. He had created his own complete martial art, which Yujiro dubbed the art of Ali. But he also pointed out that the art was incomplete due to Ali's time away from fighting, and then landed a sucker punch on him. Yujiro confessed that he saw Ali as a symbol of hope. When Ali asked what Yujiro's dream was, the answer was simple: to become the strongest man in the world. Meanwhile, Baki and Kozue arrive at a cabin in the mountains. Baki is nothing but skin and bones, incredibly weak, and he collapses. The cabin's owner, Endo, looks at Baki's scarred body and realizes it immediately. The kid's been poisoned. He begins preparing a traditional remedy. Days later, Retsukayo appears, thanks Endo for his help, and then, without any ceremony, delivers a punch that sends Baki to the floor. What a way to visit a sick friend. Retsukayo arranges for a Chinese military helicopter to transport the still poisoned Baki. Kozue and Tokugawa go with them, both extremely worried. Retsu assures Tokugawa's master that taking Baki to China is his only chance of survival, swearing he won't let him die. They arrive at the temple, where Baki wakes up in a strange room and is served a medicinal meal. Meanwhile, Retsu meets with the temple's master, Kaio Ryu, and comes up with a crazy idea: to enter the weakened Baki into the legendary Raitai tournament. Ryu is suspicious, especially when he finds out Baki is the boy who defeated Retsu. To prove Baki is worthy, Retsu suggests a test. Baki must fight a monk chosen by Ryu. The master then summons his strongest fighter, Joe, a man who can mold stone with his bare hands. In the temple arena, the fight begins. Baki, still suffering from the poison, endures a storm of powerful blows from the giant Joe without even flinching. He seems completely unfazed. Suddenly, Baki simply catches his opponent's leg mid-kick with absurd ease. After a quick exchange of blows, Joe surprisingly forfeits the match, securing Baki's spot in the tournament. Later, Retsu explains that the Raitai tournament is held once every century to decide who will be the great Kaio, and to make matters worse for Kozue, he drops a bombshell. Yujiro Hanma is also on his way to compete. At that same moment, another fighter, Muhammad Ali Jr., arrives at the temple, also seeking a spot in the tournament. To refresh your memory, Baki Hanma is on a mission to defeat his father, Yujiro, the strongest man alive. After some violent showdowns with 5 death row inmates, Baki was poisoned and rushed to China. We also learn that before heading to China, Yujiro finds Muhammad Ali Jr. and immediately starts trashing his fighting style, saying his father never perfected it. Ali Jr. stands his ground, insisting that he did. Things get heated. Ali Jr. displays incredible speed, but Yujiro dodges everything with the greatest of ease. Looking like Neo from The Matrix, Yujiro even mimics the Ali Igari stance, a defense that neutralized his father in the past. Unimpressed, Ali Jr. simply turns his back and walks away. This act drives Yujiro completely insane, and he goes on a rampage, destroying everything in sight. To prove his worth, Ali Jr. faces a martial arts master and defeats him with a devastating blow, earning the respect of Master Ryu.
I can hardly wait.
At the tournament, the announcer introduces the 12 Kaio Masters. They are joined by 3 special guests, Muhammad Ali Jr., Baki Hanma, and of course, Yujiro Hanma. The first match is announced, Kaio Ryu versus Yujiro. Even before the fight officially begins, Yujiro lunges forward and disfigures Ryu's face, leaving Retsu in a state of absolute fury. The next fight is announced, Muhammad Ali Jr. versus the giant Kaio Joe. Backstage, Kozue, worried sick about Baki, goes to talk to Ali Jr. He plays motivated motivational coach, saying that a prayer is just a way of committing to a goal, and to prove his point, he promises he'll take care of Baki by defeating him in the tournament. To seal the deal, he gives her a hug, real smooth. Back in the arena, Ali Jr. knocks down the giant Kaio Joe right at the start, but the big man gets back up and we realize he's in a hurry, trying to end the fight before his energy runs out. Ali Jr. withstands the pressure and delivers the final blow, knocking his opponent out cold. The third fight is Baki Hanma versus Kaio Lee. Baki's situation is dire. He's bleeding and weak. Retsu warns that Lee is a master of the poison hand. Kozue, desperate, rushes at Retsu, begging him not to let Baki fight, but Baki stops her, thanks her for her support, and says it gives him courage. In the ring, Baki's condition is obvious. He attacks first and immediately takes a hit from the poison hand. The venom spreads. Baki collapses and vomits blood. Lying on the ground, he has a crazy idea. He bites his own foot to suck out the poison. Out of nowhere, Kozue's tears fall on him, and in a classic soap opera twist, they completely heal him. The power of love, my friends. Baki stands up, lighter than ever, ready to continue the fight against a shell-shocked Kaio Lee, and as expected, Baki defeats him with ease. After being poisoned, Baki is treated to a feast fit for a king, courtesy of Retsu Kaio. After he's eaten everything, Retsu prepares dessert, 10 liters of water mixed with 4 kilograms of fructose. Baki chugs the entire bucket and his body begins to steam, as if he's undergoing a Super Saiyan transformation. His muscle cells are instantly restored. Meanwhile, Yujiro Hanma goes to have a chat with the elderly Kaku Kaio, who is in a wheelchair. Kaku calls Yujiro weak for being unable to control his desires, stating that martial arts are meant to tame such impulses. In the arena, Kaku rises from his chair to fight Samwon, a Muay Thai fighter. A flashback shows that Samwon was trained in China and earned the title of Kaio despite being Thai. The fight begins, and Kaku shows that the trolling knows no bounds. He simply pulls his opponent's shorts down. While Samwon is distracted, Kaku flicks him right between the legs, resulting in a humiliating knockout. Later, an enraged Samwon confronts Yujiro, who mocks him for his loss. Samwon attacks, but Yujiro dodges and throws him to the ground, knocking him out again. On the other side, the convict Dorian enters to fight Kaio, but Dorian is in his own world, just eating candy and ignoring the attacks. Frustrated, Kaio challenges Dorian's attendant, Biscuit Oliva. Kaio boasts that his body is as hard as diamond. Oliva then grabs him and crushes him until he becomes a small, compact ball of muscle and bone, ending the fight in the most bizarre way possible. After turning a man into a human meatball, Biscuit Oliva poses for the crowd, feeling like a total badass. The next Raitai tournament match is announced. Kaio Jaku, a master of Kukendo, versus Kaio Chin. Chin lands a powerful blow and explains that his style unites the principles of fist and earth. Mid-fight, Jaku makes Chin a job offer, a position as an instructor for his 24,000 apprentices. Immediately after, he grabs Chin, dislocates his shoulder, and wins the match. Business is business, right? In a hallway, Baki finally confronts his father, Yujiro Hanma, and challenges him. Yujiro, without breaking a sweat, grabs Baki's face, throws him through a concrete wall, and sends him flying out of the building. Baki gets up, stunned by the brutality, and runs off. The power gap is still absurd. Back in the arena, Retsu Kaio faces Kaio's son. Son challenges Retsu to a test of grip strength, which Retsu wins by crushing his opponent's rings. The fight itself is a cakewalk, and Retsu defeats Son easily. Later, Kaku Kaio gathers the remaining fighters. Disappointed with the Chinese losses, he simply cancels the tournament and creates a new format, a 5-man Chinese coalition team versus the 5 foreign winners. The foreign team is a kind of Avengers of ass-kicking. Baki, Yujiro, Biscuit Oliva, Ali Jr., and Jaku. Kaku's team includes Retsu, Shunsei, Shobun, and Han. The two teams face off, with Yujiro laughing at the situation.
Shame on you, Chinese fighters! We mustn't lose the title of Kaio Emperor!
The fight between Biscuit Oliva and Shobun Ron begins, and Shobun starts with a strange style, hands in his pockets, a stance he calls the pocket hand. As Oliva tries to figure out what this nonsense is, Yujiro and Baki Hanma appear in the audience. Yujiro, acting as a high-class commentator, explains to Baki that Shobun's technique is like an EI sword draw, generating immense power from a standstill. Shobun then unleashes a flurry of strikes so fast, they mess with Oliva's eardrums, leaving him disoriented. In response, Oliva decides to troll his opponent and copies the exact same pocket hand pose. Annoyed, Shoban abandons his own technique, and Oliva takes the opportunity to mock his lack of conviction. The brawl gets serious when Oliva reveals he's already figured out the trick. The movement doesn't start in the hands, but in the waist. What follows is a pocket hand duel, with both men trading blows. Oliva's raw strength proves superior, and he overpowers Shoban, finishing with a devastating headbutt. Even so, Shoban gets up and attempts a spear hand strike, but Oliva's abs, trained by pulling helicopters, simply nullify the attack. Oliva ends the fight with a brutal headbutt, mercilessly defeating Shoban. In the waiting room, Kakukayo's son, Shunsei, vows to kill the remaining opponents. The next fight is his against Baki Hanma. Shunsei charges forward but is knocked out in 2 seconds by a combination of a chin jab, a hook, and a kick. A victory faster than an Instagram story. The final fight of the day is announced: Retsu Kaio versus Kaio Jaku. Instead of a handshake, Jaku launches a surprise attack, which Retsu defends, kicking off the battle. Jaku keeps offering his hand again and again, like a persistent troll, until Retsu finally accepts, but uses the opportunity to land a series of punches. Jaku doesn't let it slide, grabbing Retsu's hand and breaking his arm. With one messed up arm each, Retsu declares the fight is now even. They both take off their shoes, signaling things are about to get serious. Jaku grabs Retsu's ankle and targets a vital pressure point, but Retsu counters by yanking Jaku's beard clean off as if it were fake. Seeing that he's in deep trouble, Jaku offers another handshake, this time to fix Retsu's elbow. The moment he pops the joint back in place, Retsu delivers a violent punch that breaks Jaku's nose and knocks him out cold. A true masterstroke. Retsu is declared the winner and carries the defeated Jaku out of the arena, who, completely broken, begs to be taken to Japan. The next matchup is announced: Kaio Han versus Muhammad Ali Jr. The fight has barely started when Ali Jr. lands a punch that slices Han's face and knocks him to the ground. Baki and the others realize that Ali Jr.'s technique involves kicking the ground to generate more power in his punches, a type of kick that exists in boxing. Despite being down and bleeding, Han gets up as if nothing happened, ready to continue the fight. With the score at 3-1, the announcer declares the defeat of the Chinese team, and the hopeful crowd falls completely silent. It's at this exact moment that Yujiro Hanma, the captain of the Japan-America team, enters the arena. He gives a surprising speech, praising Kakukayo, acknowledging the 4,000 years of Chinese martial arts and the countless fighters who never reached the level Kaku has. Then, Yujiro raises the stakes to the maximum. If he loses this final fight, his team's 3 previous victories will be nullified. It's all or nothing. The fight begins with Kaku hurling his wheelchair at Yujiro, who catches it mid-air and courteously offers it back for Kaku to sit. As he pushes Kaku in the now mangled chair, Yujiro asks what he has gained and lost in life. Kaku recounts his past. He was obsessed with pure physical strength until he was defeated by an old, frail master who used technique, or reason. After that, Kaku abandoned his muscles and spent a century mastering reason, a process he describes as more painful than losing his physical power. Back in the fight, Kaku uses his Shaori technique to effortlessly deflect a punch from Yujiro and absorb a kick by dislocating his own jaw. Yujiro is impressed, but quickly figures out the trick. Kaku uses a single strand of hair to make his opponent instinctively tense up, creating an opening. Yujiro scoffs, calling it child's play. He declares he will no longer use Shaori. Instead, he tenses every muscle in his body, unleashing a terrifying aura before punching the ground and cracking the entire arena floor. Kaku realizes he hasn't felt such tension in over 100 years. The tournament final is on fire. On one side, Yujiro Hanma, the guy who thinks fighting techniques are just for show compared to raw strength. On the other, Kakukayo, an elderly master who completely disagrees. Yujiro goes all out, treating Kaku like a punching bag and throwing him from one side of the arena to the other. But the old man holds his ground and counters, explaining that technique is the very antidote to ignorance. Using his Shaori technique, he simply nullifies Yujiro's strength. Yujiro is pissed. He unleashes his full power, and the famous demon face appears on his back. Berserker mode activated.
Now it looks like a weeping face.
Kaku, cool as a cucumber, just observes and comments that Yujiro's body is a freak of nature, a perfect fighting machine. The fight resumes with insane intensity, but after a wild exchange, Yujiro starts to gain the upper hand. Just as he's about to deliver the final blow, Kaku goes limp and collapses. A doctor rushes into the arena and declares, "The master's heart has stopped. Death by old age." Yujiro is furious with this anticlimactic ending and is about to take his anger out on the body when Kaku simply wakes up. He explains that he used a technique to fake his own death and escape the attack. Having survived, Kaku declares himself the winner, proving that martial arts has triumphed. Later, he even trolls Yujiro, saying they'll fight again in 100 years. Meanwhile, Baki, who watched the whole thing, reflects on his own path. He begins training alone in a forest, focused on the one man he truly wants to face, his father. After getting a call out of the blue, Kozue goes to meet Muhammad Ali Jr. The guy wastes no time. He says he wants to fight Baki and then shamelessly asks her to marry him. His justification? That a woman's job is to stand by the strongest man in the world, and he's going to prove that man is him. To complete the cringy spectacle, he kisses her on the cheek and then dodges the slap she tries to give him. Obviously, Kozue rejects the bizarre proposal. Later, Ali Jr. decides to pick a fight with an old man in a park, except this old man is none other than Shibukawa. Shibukawa accepts the challenge and, using a mysterious technique, starts tossing Ali Jr. around like a rag doll until the boxer is unconscious. In a flashback, we see an interview with his father, the boxing legend Muhammad Ali, who talks about his incredible speed and mentions a boy even faster than him, a fighter who doesn't compete in rings. Kozue tells Baki about the marriage proposal, and his reaction is as calm as possible. He says the decision is hers, not his. Back in the park, Ali Jr. faces Doppo. Doppo puts his hands in his pockets, and Ali Jr.'s punches simply miss, even with Doppo standing still. The master explains that he changed the rules in his opponent's head, making him misjudge the distance, as if in a sword fight. To Ali Jr., Doppo now looks like a giant. The scene ends with Ali Jr. charging forward and Doppo preparing a counter, forming an impenetrable barrier with his hands. It's been a rough week for Muhammad Ali Jr. First, he runs into Baki Hanma in the middle of a gigantic feast and challenges him to a fight. The two head to an underground area and the brawl begins. Jack absolutely demolishes Ali Jr. in a beating so brutal it's hard to watch. Even so, Jack leaves before finishing him, and Ali Jr., completely broken, gets up, impressed by his own durability. Meanwhile, in an interview, his father, Ali Sr., reveals that the one who truly destroyed him wasn't his career, it was his own son. 5 days later, Ali Jr., covered in bandages, tries to meet with Kozue, but their meeting is interrupted by Goki Shibukawa, who drags him to a park for a real fight, since their first one was just playing around. Shibukawa defeats him again with his Aiki, breaking the man's fingers and throwing him against a tree. Later, even more injured, Ali Jr. tries again to talk to Kozue, but this time Doppo Orochi shows up wanting a rematch. In a vacant lot, Doppo breaks Ali Jr.'s hand by blocking a punch with his forehead and then beats him mercilessly. In the end, he leaves him with a choice: give up or keep getting pummeled. The saga of humiliation ends with Ali Jr. in his hotel room, looking like a mummy on crutches, when he receives an unexpected visitor. It's his father, Muhammad Ali Sr., who enters and challenges him to a bare-knuckle fight. Seeking revenge for a loss 5 years ago, Jr. tries to play the victim, saying he's all banged up, but his father isn't having it. He says he spent the last 5 years training like a madman, just like Rocky Balboa, for this rematch, and calls his son a coward for making excuses. Provoked, Jr. throws his crutch aside and accepts the fight. The bout barely begins before Ali Sr. shows who's boss. With a single, elegant, and precise punch that carries all the pain and effort of years of training, he knocks his son down. But the fight continues, and what follows is a massacre. The father completely dominates, dropping his son multiple times. Even covered in blood, Jr. refuses to give up until he finally passes out, admitting his father is stronger in every way. Later, with Jr. resting, his father reveals his plan. He knew his son was weakened after 3 losses in the arena and challenged him to make him quit fighting, but Jr. refuses, saying his ambition is not yet fulfilled. Just then, Tokugawa, the head of the arena, arrives and offers Jr. a fight against Baki Hanma. Provoked once again by his father, Jr. accepts the challenge by performing a dogeza, a bow of respect so deep it impresses everyone. After recovering, he tells Kozue that he hates Baki for having the 2 things he wants most, her and the title of the strongest. Ali Jr. is on his way to the secret arena to face the champion. The driver is already building the tension, saying that with Yujiro Hanma not around, his opponent is the strongest man in the world. Inside, Ali Jr. walks down a sinister corridor, remembering the rules. No weapons, no referee, anything goes. Fear starts to creep in. in. He puts on a white gi and enters the arena, where a crowd awaits him. Suddenly, emerging from the darkness, is Yujiro Hanma, the ogre, leaving the audience in shock. Yujiro announces that Ali's opponent is none other than his 18-year-old son, Baki. The fight begins and Baki wastes no time. He dodges Ali's attack and, with a single punch, sends him to the ground.
I missed? He's so fast.
Ali gets up, battered, and spouts a philosophy of kill without being killed, but it's useless. Baki dodges every strike with ease, lands a devastating kick, stomps on him, and finishes with a rear naked choke. As Ali is about to pass out, Muhammad Ali himself enters the ring. Baki releases him and warns Ali that if he hadn't stepped in, his son would be dead. He explains that Ali lost because he wasn't truly prepared to die. Then Baki turns to Yujiro in the audience and challenges him to a fight, and the ogre accepts with a smile. A narrator explains that Yujiro killed Baki's mother, and this is the official challenge of son against father. As Kozue consoles Ali, the news spreads, and the world's greatest fighters acknowledge Baki's power. In the end, we see Baki training alone in the arena, shadowboxing against the silhouette of his father. The alarm blares in a maximum security prison. A massacre has taken place in a glass cell, and the culprit, Yanagi, a death row inmate, has vanished once again. A quick flashback shows the guy's track record, his vacuum palm technique, the poison hand, and the beatings he took from Izo Motobe and Yujiro Hanma, which left him with a prosthetic hand and a destroyed face. Chief Sonoda interrogates the only surviving guard from Yanagi's second escape, who recounts how he faked being a catatonic invalid for months, fooling everyone. During a transfer, he killed the new guards and disappeared. Sonoda then begins a tour to check on the other escapees, and things only get weirder. First, he finds Dorian in a Chinese temple. The man seems to have regressed to a childlike state, but he's actually been training in secret and has packed on 20 kilograms of muscle. Next, Sonoda visits Doyle, who is now blind and deaf. He has developed superhuman touch, like a criminal daredevil, capable of catching bats in the dark. The next stop is Sikorsky's cell, who possesses absurd grip strength. He can crush a coin into a tiny ball and is seen scaling a smooth wall using only his fingertips, like a prison yard Spider-Man. Lastly, Sonoda looks into the case of Speck, who aged decades after his defeat and is now bedridden, but tests show his muscles are contracting non-stop, as if he were swimming through a super dense liquid. In the end, we see all 5 convicts laughing, preparing for their Tokyo revenge. Here we meet a park ranger named Saman, who's at a tense press conference. He's the sole survivor of a massacre, and reporters want to know why the hell he called in the army to hunt a single elephant. Saman lays it all out. It wasn't just any animal, but a monster the size of a building that killed 41 people and nearly 1,000 animals. If they didn't stop it, the park would have become a wasteland. But the craziest part is that the army didn't even have to fire a shot. According to him, a man just appeared out of nowhere, beat the creature to a pulp with his bare hands, and to top it all off, cooked and ate it. Saman admits he doesn't believe the story himself, even though he saw it with his own eyes. Cut to a boy named Rumina, who's being bullied and is forced to challenge the strongest student in the world. He enters the school and comes face to face with 3 delinquents. Scared out of his wits, he pulls out a switchblade and stammers out the challenge. The guys burst out laughing but set up the fight for after school. When the time comes, Baki Hanma shows up. In Rumina's eyes, Baki transforms into a mountain of muscle. Baki warns him that he's not going to hold back and gives the kid a solid slap, sending him flying straight into the river. He then helps him out and declares that they're now friends. Out of nowhere, Captain Stridham appears, announcing that Baki's father, the ogre, has finally recognized him as a worthy challenger. Baki couldn't care less, calling it a little family squabble, and decides he's going to train with a random opponent. Walking with Rumina, Baki starts shadowboxing. He explains that he's training with an imaginary opponent, one as strong as a dinosaur. Suddenly, Rumina, who knows a thing or two about boxing, sees a phantom opponent materialize in front of Baki, the former heavyweight champion, Iron Michael.
I see it! I don't believe my own eyes. Champion! It's Iron Michael himself!
The 2 trade blows, and Baki takes a real knockdown, complete with a bloody nose and bruises. He gets back up, says he was just warming up, and ends the fight with an illegal kick, making Iron Michael's ghost disappear. Baki takes Rumina to his house, and on the way, they pass through a neighborhood covered in graffiti insulting him. Baki is completely unfazed, explaining that it's the work of people who can only fight with words, like internet trolls. Inside his home, he starts stretching, and Rumina asks about his next opponent. Baki confirms he's he's going to fight his father, Yujiro Hanma, whom he describes as the undisputed champion of all creatures on Earth, stronger than any animal, and even immune to cancer. To prepare for this final boss-level battle, Baki leads Rumina to a secret underground training room. There, he reveals his training partner, a praying mantis in a small glass jar. Baki launches into a wild biology lesson, explaining that insects have disproportionate strength, and that, if they were human-sized, they would be invincible. He details how the praying mantis is a natural-born fighter, the inspiration for a famous Chinese martial art. When Rumina points out the creature's minuscule size, Baki says he'll use his imagination to turn it into a 90-kilo monster, just as he did with the ghost of the boxer, Iron Michael. Baki then begins an insane fight against the giant imaginary praying mantis. The force of the invisible battle is so great that the concrete walls of the basement begin to crack. As Rumina watches, he slowly starts to see the gigantic creature Baki is facing. After a brutal exchange, Baki realizes that the praying mantis, having no natural predators, has terrible defense. Adopting a new fighting style that mimics a bird hunting its prey, Baki finds an opening and defeats the illusion.
Sting as hard as metal!
The fight ends, and the imaginary monster vanishes, leaving Baki exhausted and bleeding, but victorious. Stridum arrives at a mansion to meet Yujiro Hanma, who is training in a custom pool with a current of nearly 21 kilometers per h, 13 miles per hour. After swimming against the current for an hour without even coming up for air, Yujiro finally emerges.
Mr. Yujiro Hanma. Hard at work as usual today, I see.
Stridum tells him about Baki's progress, mentioning the training with the 90-kilo praying mantis. Yujiro finds the idea of fighting an imaginary opponent utterly ridiculous, laughing hysterically and declaring that what's fake is fake, period. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Texas, the President of the United States is holding a parade to rewrite the history of JFK's assassination. Right at the fateful spot, Baki Hanma simply appears out of nowhere, kidnaps the president, and takes him to a diner. Baki, who has just turned 18, reveals his one and only demand: to be sent to the Arizona State Prison, home of the legendary criminal Biscuit Oliva, also known as Mr. Unchained. The president, feeling like an extra in his own life, immediately agrees. Baki is arrested and sentenced at lightning speed. He is transported to the massive pentagon-shaped prison, nicknamed the Black Pentagon. After a series of security checks, Baki meets the warden, whose jaw drops at his physique. The warden reveals that Oliva, upon hearing Baki's name, asked to see him immediately. Baki is taken to Oliva's private quarters, which look more like a luxury hotel suite. Oliva greets him, instantly realizing he's there for a warm-up before taking on Yujiro. Baki launches a surprise attack, but Oliva tanks the punch without even breaking a sweat. Unfazed, Oliva says he's busy preparing for another fight and sends Baki to his cell. There, Baki finds the former boxing champion Iron Michael. When Baki assumes Michael is the prison's number 2, another inmate, Gevaru, reveals himself as the true second strongest. Baki challenges him on the spot, and Gevaru accepts, saying, "Today is a good day to die." The madman smokes right in a guard's face, and nobody says a word. At chow time, while everyone else eats pork and beans, this number 2 gets a special armlet, total VIP treatment. His status is challenged by a giant former sumo wrestler who proclaims himself the new number 1. He bends a spoon and flips the entire table onto number 2, drenching him in food. The tension rises as number 2 grabs a guard's weapon and forces the sumo wrestler to aim it at him. Just as the giant is about to pull the trigger, number 2 takes him down with a well-placed kick. They head to the gym to settle things man to man, and that's when it gets bizarre. Number 2 uses a single strand of hair to mess with the sumo's inner ear, causing the man to lose his balance and fall. After the fight, Baki learns from an older inmate that the guy's name is Jun Gevaru. A flashback reveals that Gevaru is a modern-day pirate who fought for his small island's independence from the United States. He trained an army without weapons and stood up to President George W. Bush himself. forcing the US to recognize his nation's freedom. The old man explains that, with victory secured, Givaru came to prison for one reason only: to fight and defeat the strongest man in America, Biscuit Oliva. Baki realizes that he, Givaru, and a whole lot of others are all there for the same prize. The old-timer reveals an absurd fact. The US government uses satellites to monitor 3 men, Yujiro Hanma, Biscuit Oliva, and Jun Givaru. A narrator explains that if any of them moves faster than 4 kilometers per h, 2.5 miles per hour, more than half of the world's satellites are redirected to track them, causing the entire global GPS to glitch. Back in the cell, a bald, muscular guard starts harassing the old man, but Baki steps in and makes fun of the guy's baldness. The guard gets pissed, lunges at him claiming self-defense, but Baki knocks him out with a single blow without even breaking a sweat. Jun Givaru appears out of nowhere, watches Baki save the guard from a nasty fall, and then just drops the guy on the floor.
You'll get nothing in return for helping him, you know.
3 days in solitary later, Baki is put to work laying roads in the desert. A guard notices his insane strength. Baki needs 2 strikes to set the blocks in place, while former heavyweight champion Iron Michael needs 3. During a break, Michael tells Baki he's getting out next month to reclaim his title. Meanwhile, the prison warden receives a $2 million check from the International Boxing Association with one request: ensure Iron Michael never fights again. To carry out the mission, the warden summons the Mouth, a trio of identical, perfectly coordinated fighters named Lip, Tooth, and Tongue. That night, the trio ambushes Michael, explaining that a champion, no matter how strong, can't beat 3 amateurs because he isn't trained for teamwork. They surround him with a storm of blows, leaving him cornered and brutally beaten. Once he's down, they continue to kick and stomp on him until he's completely out. Just as they're about to finish the job, another prisoner, Givaru, appears. He starts off with some bizarre mind games, makes a pinwheel spin with a breath, urinates a circle on the ground to create an arena, and even seems to summon a wind that messes up the trio's hair. Next, Givaru reveals a demon face he's painted on himself with mud and takes off his shirt.
It's hard. Time to set sail. Now, let's continue.
The 3 attack in their coordinated formation, but Givaru uses an incredible spinning technique, creating a literal tornado of punches that defeats all 3 at once. Their leader, Lip, panics and tries to flee, but Givaru easily corners him. Givaru returns to his cell when Biscuit Oliva suddenly arrives, ripping the solid steel cell door off its hinges as if it were made of paper. Oliva and Givaru have a tense conversation, recognizing each other as men who never outgrew their childish love for fighting. Oliva says he fights for his girlfriend, while Givaru claims to fight only for himself. Baki, who had been watching the whole thing, is infuriated by their philosophical chat. He gets up, grabs them both at once, and declares their discussion pointless, challenging them to settle it with their fists. In the Arizona State Prison, the inmates can only talk about one legend: Biscuit Oliva, Mr. Unchained. Givaru discovers that Oliva doesn't live in a cell, but in a luxury suite, with total freedom and even a girlfriend, Maria, living with him. However, the other prisoners confess they've never actually seen this Maria, leading Givaru to believe she's just an imaginary girlfriend, like an anime character Oliva made up to boost his reputation. Meanwhile, Oliva is getting dressed to the nines in his suite, tuxedo and all, speaking romantically to his beloved. He enters the bedroom and we finally meet Maria, and she is an extremely obese woman. To make matters worse, she starts cursing Oliva out, calling him a loser and throwing things at him. But the madman seems to love it when she finally calls him darling and says, "I love you." He is ecstatic and promises to win his next fight for her. Back in his cell, Givaru holds a jar and says it contains courage. A quick flashback shows a kid giving him the jar after a devastating hurricane. The kid had essentially stood in the middle of the storm and managed to capture its force inside the jar. The day of the fight arrives and all 4,000 prisoners gather. Givaru Givaru enters the arena, and Oliva makes a grand entrance. He arrives carrying a king-sized bed with Maria on it and throws it to the ground. Then, he rips off his tuxedo to reveal an absurd physique. Givaru opens the jar. A gust of wind rushes out and he prepares to fight. He challenges Oliva to a handkerchief duel, where the first to let go loses. Oliva accepts, but scoffs, holding his end with just his pinky finger. In response, Givaru plucks a hair from his chin and uses it to try to blind Oliva, leaving him stunned. The tension snaps, and they begin trading punches. The competition of one-upmanship continues. Givaru counters with the Gilberto style, simply letting the handkerchief rest on his open palm. A flashback reveals this style originated from a mafia execution game. The fight is interrupted by Maria, who calls their little handkerchief game ridiculous and boring. And in the most random twist, Baki had been sleeping peacefully on her chest. Provoked by Maria's words, Oliva and Givaru drop the handkerchief and the fight gets serious. Givaru rushes in with a flurry of attacks, singing a sea shanty as tattoo-like markings appear on his face. Oliva endures all the blows like a true tank and answers with a single devastating punch that sends Givaru flying into the prison wall, knocking him out.
New light, the way I really am.
Baki wakes up, thanks Maria for the nap, and simply walks away. Just when everyone thought the fight was over, Guevara gets back on his feet, motivated by visions of his impoverished people and his desire for freedom. The two giants face off once more, and Guevara explains his fighting philosophy. He says all martial arts have a blind spot because they only use the surface of the ground. His technique, however, channels energy from the Earth's core, over 6 million meters deep. Basically, the guy is using the entire planet to throw a punch. He then lands a powerful blow on Oliva. Guevara has a bizarre hallucination where he has won the fight. In his mind, President Bush bows in apology, and even Yujiro appears, laughing like a maniac. But the vision fades, and reality hits hard. Oliva is standing victorious over a fainted Guevara in the middle of a crater. Biscuit Oliva, showing respect, orders his men to carry Guevara away with care. Baki then appears to confront Oliva. Mr. Unchained explains the source of his power. He eats over 100,000 calories a day, and his muscles are so compressed that if he were to relax, he would blow up the entire prison. He's like a protein-powered atomic bomb, and all that strength is dedicated to one person, his beloved Maria. He lifts her effortlessly and walks away singing. Later, the guards discover that Guevara has escaped by digging a tunnel, leaving behind a custom-printed dollar bill as an invitation for Oliva to visit his island. Baki also decides he's had enough of prison. He smashes his cell, defeats the guards, and reaches the main gate, where the warden is waiting for him. Baki then declares that he too can become unchained. The warden scoffs, asking how he can be unchained if he's surrounded. Baki, with a smirk, assures him he can leave whenever he wants. As the guards close in with their rifles aimed, the warden remains doubtful. Baki then says he has already escaped, and the warden's sunglasses simply shatter. He explains that he broke the glasses the moment the warden invaded his personal space, but the show isn't over. Baki opens his hand to reveal a handful of buttons he'd snatched from the shirts of all 6 guards without anyone noticing, a masterclass in sleight of hand. He explains that their arrogance and faith in their weapons left them vulnerable. If they had fired, he would have taken out at least 2 of them before getting hit. The guards freeze, realizing they are now the hostages. At Baki's command, the warden links arms with him, and the two walk off as if they're on a picnic. The giant gates open and Baki walks free, just to prove he could. Shortly after, he returns and asks to be put in cuffs, because his goal was never to escape. Just then, the original Mr. Unchained, Biscuit Oliva, arrives on a motorcycle. Baki immediately starts provoking him, saying that this need to be the most free is, in itself, a kind of prison. Oliva is furious, but then calms down, admitting the kid has a point. Later, Oliva goes to Baki's solitary cell and pours a sugary drink on him, boasting about his luxurious dinner. Baki just laughs, promising that soon, Oliva will be begging him for a fight. The nervous prison warden remarks to Biscuit Oliva that Baki's escape has made the other inmates see his strength as more pure. Oliva, after a fit of rage, comes up with an idea: a massive televised fight between himself, America's strongest man, and Baki, history's strongest high schooler. The warden, of course, loves it. Later, we see a different side of Oliva. He visits his beloved, bedridden Maria, and weeps as he admires her strength even in sickness. Oliva then goes to Baki's cell and offers him a fight in 2 weeks. Baki scoffs, calls him Mr. Chained, and lands a swift kick, demanding the fight now. The exchange of blows begins in an insane fashion. Oliva drags Baki Baki through a concrete wall and starts using him like a human nunchaku, slamming his body into the ground with so much force that it leaves a deep imprint. Lying on the ground, Baki feels a nostalgic power, similar to what he felt fighting his father. His body seems to liquefy and reform before he stands up, a demonic face appearing in the sweat stain on his back. The guards recognize it, the legendary demon face muscles. Oliva notices the transformation and charges. The fight is over in a flash. Reviewing the footage, the warden and guards are shocked. Oliva was knocked out by Baki's first punch. Everything that happened afterward was his body moving on autopilot. On the ground, Oliva reflects on Baki's power, a kind of consciousness cheat code that allows him to act 0.5 seconds ahead of normal. Saying he doesn't need such tricks, Oliva lands one last powerful blow. The fight rages on, and Biscuit Oliva uses a bizarre technique. He curls up into a perfect sphere of muscle, an impenetrable human bowling ball. Baki's first kick simply bounces off. A guard explains that Oliva can concentrate his entire strength into any point on his body, deflecting any attack. Baki figures out the trick and counters with his own technique, locking all his joints to deliver a single devastating blow. The punch lands, but Oliva does something even crazier. He absorbs Baki into his muscle mass, trapping the boy inside and beating him senseless before spitting him out. Oliva declares that in a no-holds-barred fight, victory only comes when one of them admits defeat. Down on the ground, Baki refuses and points out Oliva's weakness, his desperate desire to hear Baki surrender. The fight resumes and Baki proposes a slugfest. No more techniques. Even when Iron Michael warns him that trading blows with a man 100 kilos heavier is suicide, Baki doesn't back down. The two plant their feet and simultaneously deliver a full power punch to each other's face. The impact is so absurd that Baki flies through a concrete wall, but Oliva also collapses to the ground, defeated. After his beloved Maria arrives, Oliva concedes defeat. He announces to the entire prison that Baki is the new #1 and demands his immediate release.
I just lost a fight against Baki Hanma.
Baki casually pedals away from the prison on a bicycle. Elsewhere, Yujiro Hanma discusses his son's victory. Captain Stridham shows up to chat with Baki and pops the question, what's the most powerful creature that ever existed? Baki, thinking like a Jurassic Park fan, bets on the T-Rex, but Stridham shows him a newspaper with a game-changing headline. They found a prehistoric man who, he claims, is even stronger. In a salt mine, workers unearth a perfectly preserved caveman, frozen in a giant block of salt alongside a T-Rex he was hunting. The man, later nicknamed Pickle, turns science on its head. The scientists, led by a Dr. Payne, begin an experiment to revive Pickle by placing him in a saline solution. But one impatient scientist, Alan, decides to grill up a piece of the T-Rex. The smell of roasted meat works better than any alarm clock. Pickle awakens and stares down the terrified Alan, who shoots him several times, but the bullets just bounce off his abdominal muscles. Pickle charges at Alan, who runs off in a panic. The caveman then escapes the lab, smashing through a wall and crushing police cars like they were made of paper. The army sends a giant battle robot to try and contain the beast, but Pickle dismantles the mech as if it were a Lego toy. That's when Jerry Stridham arrives and, instead of fighting, approaches Pickle with respect. He communicates through gestures, offers a handshake, and promises to take him to Japan, a place filled with strong fighters. Pickle accepts the invitation. In the end, we see him sitting on a cliff, observing the modern city at night, completely displaced in time. Pickle lands at airport under US military guard. As Baki Hanma watches from his TV, a brave or crazy reporter tries to interview Pickle. His reaction is primitive. He grabs her, throws her to the ground, and lies on top of her to the horror of the crowd, then simply falls asleep. A scientist explains that Pickle was frozen during the meteor impact that wiped out the dinosaurs and that modern morals don't apply to a guy from 200 million years ago. Pickle's behavior causes an uproar, and protesters gather outside the military base where he's being held. That's when Yujiro Hanma decides to show up. He walks through the front gate, and his presence is so intimidating that two guards start fighting each other while a third punches himself in the face. Yujiro tells them they made the right choice because he would have killed them otherwise, then breaks the gate's lock with his bare hand. Inside the base, it's not just Yujiro. A true all-star lineup of fighting monsters, Retsukayo, Doppo Orochi, Jack Hanma, and many others, also invades the facility, all drawn by the new challenge. They meet at Pickle's enclosure enclosure, but the man is asleep. Jack, ever impatient, kicks the enclosure's giant tree to wake him. Suddenly, the reinforced glass of the cage shatters. It's Yujiro, making his grand entrance. He addresses Pickle, explaining that all these warriors have come to fight him out of respect for his strength. In response, Pickle rises to his full, massive height, ready for whatever comes next. While everyone is hyped to fight the caveman, Baki tells Rumina he has no interest in facing Pickle. He compares him to a national monument that shouldn't be touched. Baki's only goal is to defeat his father, and Rumina notices he seems happy when talking about it. Meanwhile, Retsu Kaio is completely obsessed. When Baki asks for kung fu lessons, Retsu refuses, revealing his burning desire to test his 4,000 years of martial arts against Pickle's prehistoric power. In the underground arena, Tokugawa and Captain Stridum discover that Pickle refuses to eat. He only eats what he hunts and kills himself, but every animal they've brought, including a bear, has fled in fear. The solution? Bring in a giant Siberian tiger. Pickle wakes up, locks eyes with the beast, and finishes it off.
Anything that attacks him becomes food in his eyes.
The event sparks controversy, but Professor Payne defends the action, saying that sacrificing endangered species is a small price to pay to keep the miracle of Pickle alive. Retsu then approaches Tokugawa and offers himself as Pickle's next meal, vowing to fight back. In the arena, Retsu faces the sleeping caveman. Pickle awakens, sensing a worthy opponent, and assumes a fighting stance. Retsu attacks, but Pickle's raw power sends him flying. After a series of precise strikes from Retsu, Pickle grabs him and bites a chunk out of his shoulder. In agony, Retsu abandons his techniques and resorts to wild, ineffective punches. He then returns to his martial arts, has a vision of his ideal self, and unleashes a final devastating kick as the fight continues.
Entrust everything. Everything.
To the bosom of the martial arts!
Right after the brutal fight between Retsu Kaio and Pickle, the spectators, Tokugawa, a general, and a scientist named Pain, are debating the outcome. While Tokugawa swears Retsu won, Pain drops a bombshell. Pickle's neck anatomy is identical to that of a giant quadrupedal animal. This suggests the caveman used to walk on all fours, and that's exactly what we see in the fight's final moments. Pickle simply drops to a 4-point stance and charges with absurd force. Retsu tries to hold his ground for a counterattack, but is thrown so violently that he smashes through a concrete wall, utterly defeated. After the brawl, Pickle weeps for a moment and then approaches Retsu with the clear intent to eat him, following his hunter's instinct. Tokugawa rushes to stop him but is tossed aside like a rag doll. Pickle then begins to Retsu's leg. Before the scene can turn into a full-on feast, Dr. Payne manages to inject the prehistoric man with a powerful anesthetic, knocking him out instantly. Later, Retsu wakes up in the hospital to find his right leg has been amputated below the knee. He is consumed by shame, not because he lost, but because he feels he lacked the courage to face death and honor his promise to be eaten. Baki Hanma shows up to offer moral support, telling him his true strength lies in his spirit and that he should be proud of his pain. Meanwhile, the news spreads, and Doppo Orochi reaches a terrifying conclusion. To Pickle, modern fighters aren't opponents, they're just food. To cap it all off, Pickle escapes from his high-security containment, gets hit by a truck, stands up without a scratch, tears the vehicle apart, and begins eating the meat from its cargo. Haunted by Yujiro Hanma's taunts, Katsumi Orochi has been training non-stop, feeling worthless and unworthy of his position at the Shinshinkai dojo. But then he gets a call. The prehistoric man, Pickle, has escaped and is causing chaos. For Katsumi, this is the perfect opportunity. He summons the 55,000 members of the Shinshinkai, ordering them to scour Tokyo to find Pickle and avenge Retsu Kaio's defeat. Basically, a martial arts version of Where's Waldo. One of the members, Terada, actually finds Pickle but is quickly intercepted by the powerful Yakuza Hanayama, who also wants a piece of the caveman. When the two groups face off, one of Hanayama's men pulls a knife. In an absurd display of power, both Pickle and Hanayama grab the blade with their bare hands and begin a tug-of-war of grip strength that bends the steel. The stalemate is only broken by the arrival of Baki Hanma. Baki is mesmerized by Pickle's physique, seeing him as a perfectly honed weapon. The two greet each other with a fist bump, but Pickle, who learned Aikido just by watching, uses the technique to send Baki flying. Enraged, Baki's Hanma blood boils, and he responds with a powerful kick. Pickle is intrigued and decides to lead Baki and Hanayama to the underground arena. Upon hearing the news, Katsumi is devastated, feeling like he's lost his turn again. However, he finds new determination, gives a fiery speech to his men, and asks for their support in his impossible fight. At the dojo, he is visited by Retsukayo, who offers to teach him the 4,000 years of Chinese Kempo. Katsumi accepts, beginning a revolutionary new training arc to merge the two martial arts. After Baki's defeat, his father, Yujiro Hanma, shows up just to mock his son's lack of preparation, telling Tokugawa that excuses are for losers. A real dad of the year. Meanwhile, Baki is recovering and analyzing the single kick he took from Pickle. He realizes that blow has opened a new path to becoming stronger, and he now considers the two of them friends for life. To each their own, I guess. At the Shinshinkai dojo, Retsukayo is helping Katsumi Orochi perfect his famous mock punch. Retsu explains that to break the sound barrier, Katsumi needs to use more joints, suggesting he use the vertebrae in his spine to generate unprecedented speed. Their training is interrupted by the surprise appearance of the 146-year-old Grandmaster, Kaku Kayo. He arrives and immediately criticizes the idea of a perfect weapon, calling it unambitious. To prove his point, Kaku catches a raw egg in midair without breaking it, explaining that imagination can create limitless joints, far beyond the body's physical structure. It's pure martial arts metaverse logic. Inspired, Katsumi visualizes his own body with countless joints and unleashes a new, perfected punch. The result? A sonic boom that shatters every window in the dojo. Elsewhere, the trio are discussing how to contain Pickle, who was knocked out with chloroform. Tokugawa assures them he's not going anywhere, as the arena has become his new oasis, with food and fighting partners readily available. As Pickle awakens, Baki is on a hilltop, sensing his next battle. He visualizes a giant spectral T-Rex, mentally preparing for the ultimate challenge. Katsumi Orochi, Doppo's son, decides he wants to try his luck against the prehistoric man, Pickle. The arena's boss, Tokugawa, is all for it, scheduling the fight for 6 a.m. at the Tokyo Dome. Before the showdown, Katsumi has a family moment with his adoptive mother, Natsue. She reveals she's brought a special guest, his biological mother, a former circus performer. A quick flashback shows a young Katsumi, a circus prodigy, being adopted after his biological father died in an accident. It's a touching reunion, and with the blessing of both his mothers, Katsumi heads to the arena. Inside, the atmosphere is like a World Cup final. The 55,000 members of the Shinshinkai dojo are in the stands, performing a synchronized punch in the air to send energy to their leader.
There are 220 branches of Shinshinkai in Tokyo. Even the weakest human voice can become a powerful shockwave.
When Pickle enters, the fight begins. Katsumi unleashes a storm of blows on the giant's vital points, but the caveman only needs one kick to send him flying. Katsumi gets up, revealing his new technique, the mock speed. He lands a punch that breaks the sound barrier and knocks Pickle down. The problem? The blow shatters Katsumi's hand, and Pickle was just taking a nap. When the giant wakes up, he gets serious, even copying one of Yujiro Hanma's poses. In response, Katsumi unleashes one last attack, a mock-speed whip strike that draws blood from Pickle and sends him flying. However, this completely destroys Katsumi's arm. As he passes out, thinking he's won, we see that Pickle was just sleeping again. A professor explains that in nature, the fight would already be over, as a predator wouldn't waste energy on such a wounded prey. Pickle then weeps, acknowledging Katsumi as a worthy prey, before preparing to devour him. Even defeated and on the ground, Katsumi Orochi refuses to give up. In an unexpected act of sacrifice, he simply his own right arm and offers it to Pickle like a little snack, and Pickle, without a second thought, accepts the offer and devours the limb. As Katsumi finally passes out, he tells Pickle to eat the rest. The big boss Tokugawa is about to have the giant tranquilized, but Doppo Orochi appears and stops him, insisting that the silent promise between the two fighters must be honored. But instead of finishing his meal, Pickle joins his hands in a gesture of prayer and respect, acknowledging his opponent's sacrifice. The narrator explains that this is a universal universal gesture, proving the caveman understands concepts like friendship and honor. Pickle then turns his back and walks away, leaving Katsumi behind. As medics carry him away on a stretcher, the entire stadium, with its 55,000 members of the Shinshinkai, kneels in silence for their fallen leader. Watching from a hallway, Baki Hanma complains that Katsumi cut in line and fought Pickle before he could. Later, he visits Katsumi in the hospital and, to prove he's ready for combat, crushes a bouquet of roses into a drop with his bare hands. Elsewhere, Yujiro and Doppo are having a drink at a bar. Yujiro says the slack Doppo gave Katsumi in the past is what allowed him to become such a noble warrior. They conclude that Pickle is a challenge from the gods to decide who is the strongest of all time. While training, Baki realizes he can't visualize Pickle as an opponent, which only gets him more excited. The scene cuts to Pickle coming face to face with his next challenger, Jack Hammer. Jack's first punch lands square, but Pickle doesn't even budge. Impressed, Jack analyzes the man's bizarre neck structure and giant fangs and decides the best strategy is, a biting contest. The two lock jaws, and Pickle rips a huge chunk out of Jack's cheek. Any normal person would be on the floor, but Jack, he laughs at his own misfortune and lands a devastating uppercut that sends Pickle flying across the arena.
Haymaker! He sent Pickle flying, and he must weigh over 450 pounds.
Things get serious when Jack bites off Pickle's ear. The pain triggers an ancient trauma in the caveman, a memory of an encounter with a giant wasp in his youth. Completely possessed by rage, Pickle unleashes his true speed. Using the arena walls to move so fast he becomes a blur. He delivers a series of blows that Jack can't even see. The fight continues with both men trading brutal attacks until Jack is finally knocked out and falls unconscious. Pickle does a little victory dance, but soon begins to cry. He walks out of the arena just as Baki arrives, late as always. Later, Pickle sits alone with the bitter taste of victory, remembering the wasp's sting, a lesson that some things, even when killed, never truly die. After the beating he took, Jack Hammer ends up in the hospital. There, Dr. Kureya explains to everyone that although Jack will recover, his body continued to fight on its own out of sheer willpower. It's like when your video game controller runs out of batteries, but the character keeps running forward. She even tells a bizarre story about a samurai who kept running even after being decapitated. Suddenly, a nurse panics. Jack is gone. Back in the arena, Jack apologizes to Pickle for leaving in the middle of their scrap, and round 2 begins. Pickle is genuinely terrified by Jack's morbid persistence and tries to flee, but his warrior's pride wins out and he stops to face the challenge. The two exchange one last devastating blow, and Jack is finally out for the count.
This was the defeat Jack had sought. A defeat
Jack wakes up in the hospital again to find Baki, who drops the truth bomb. He's finished, but the ultimate humiliation was yet to come. The narrator reveals that Pickle didn't carry Jack away as a respected opponent, but as a piece of meat to save and eat later. Realizing this, Jack lets out a scream of pure anguish. Later, Yujiro declares that it is Baki's destiny to fight Pickle. In the arena, Baki waits for Pickle, figuring out that the caveman only fights when he's hungry. To solve this, the team of scientists brings a giant slab of T-Rex meat. Pickle devours it, shares a piece with Baki, and the two, with full bellies, fall asleep. To reignite the fighting spirit, Baki provokes Pickle with a light tap on the face. The caveman becomes furious, and the real battle finally begins.
You weren't fighting out of hunger. You were fighting out of pride.
Baki faces Pickle but is sent flying through the air by a single slap. The fall is brutal. Internally, his organs are a mess. His diaphragm has pushed into his lungs and he starts coughing up blood. Despite the severe damage, Baki forces himself to stand, trying to hide how broken he is. But Pickle, with his predator's instincts, senses that his opponent is gravely injured. Instead of finishing the fight, the primitive man shows remorse and makes a gesture that looks like a prayer. This act of pity is the last straw for Baki. The humiliation is so great that he screams for Pickle not to pray for him, but his body can no longer fight. Pickle, trying to get his playmate back in the game, gives Baki a few light taps, showing that his claws are no threat. Being treated like a fragile toy is the final insult, and Baki's brain short-circuits, not from pain, but from pure shame. Defeated, Baki walks away, climbs the arena structure, and simply jumps from the same height again. Only this time, he lands perfectly, as if his body adapted to the fall in seconds. He then unleashes a whip strike, a technique that uses a completely relaxed body to deliver a violent jolt. The blow just grazes Pickle's chin, but the vibration rattles his brain and throws him to the ground utterly confused. Baki follows up with another strike to the back, leaving a red handprint. As Pickle goes on the defensive, Baki begins to mimic the fighting styles of animals: a tiger, a praying mantis, a monkey, and a bear. Finally, he takes the form of a triceratops, a beast from Pickle's era, leaving the caveman frozen before the image of his ancient enemy.
He had been utterly transformed into the mightiest beasts that...
It's like magic.
A narrator explains that Pickle's body has essentially absorbed the weapons of 3 dinosaurs: the teeth and tail of a T-Rex, the legs and horns of a Triceratops, and the wings and talons of a Pteranodon. He's a walking arsenal. During the fight, Pickle becomes confused when Baki's martial art causes him pain, thinking he's being attacked by a T-Rex. Using a new, nearly horizontal attack stance, Pickle charges. Baki, however, uses a simple flick of his hand to deflect all that raw power, sending the caveman flying into the arena's rafters. The crowd is in shock. Retsukayo and Hanayama analyze the move, comparing it to how a bullet's trajectory can be altered by a small object, or how Cassius Clay once dislocated Sonny Liston's shoulder with a similar deflection. Unfazed, Pickle lands back in the arena. Baki then decides to truly provoke him, urinating on the ground to mark his territory. The caveman is livid. Baki decides to stop with the tricks and fight head-on. The two clash, and Baki is immediately run over and crushed to the ground. Realizing he can't block Pickle's absurd strength, Baki changes his strategy. He begins a complex dance, dodging Pickle's attacks at the last second, moving like a bullfighter. Frustrated, Pickle is reminded of a butterfly he could never catch. Seizing an opening, Baki lands a powerful kick right in Pickle's groin. The caveman collapses in agony. Everyone thinks the fight is over, but Retsu notices the look on Pickle's face wasn't one of defeat, but of pure rage. Trembling with fury, Pickle rises, entering his final, most dangerous form. The battle may be over, but the war is just beginning. The crowd's jaws are on the floor as they see the scars on Pickle's body. They realize the marks were made by the teeth of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yes, the man survived a T-Rex bite, and the crowd goes wild. Fueled by the applause, Pickle enters full-on battle mode, realigning his joints with a single crack. Baki takes this as a sign of respect and prepares himself, because now the fight is for real. Baki uses a counterattack technique, meeting Pickle's brute force with his own, but at a more precise angle, a skill only martial arts can provide. As they trade blows, they both have visions of the past. Baki sees generations of martial artists, and Pickle sees the dinosaurs and warriors he's defeated. Baki corners the caveman with his super fast movements, but then makes a foolish decision. Instead of finishing the fight with his skills, he challenges Pickle to a contest of pure endurance. The two start trading punches, but the difference in their natural stamina becomes obvious, and Baki hits the mat, defeated.
Pickle executed a move. Their battle was over.
As Baki is carried away, Retsu and Hanayama debate the outcome. Later, Baki and Pickle sit in silence atop a building, just watching the city. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Barack makes a non-aggression pact with Yujiro Hanma. To show who's boss, Yujiro simply crushes a lump of coal into a diamond. In a worldwide vote, Pickle's fate is decided. By a narrow margin, the world votes to put him back. Professor Payne is disappointed as Pickle carves a Triceratops out of stone and disappears into the Tokyo night. Baki meets his father at a fancy restaurant to finally ask the question, why did he kill his mother? The question pisses Yujiro off, and he warns his son not to cross lines he can't understand. The tension between them grows so intense that Yujiro's aura makes the entire restaurant tremble, as if in an earthquake. Baki grabs Yujiro, who retaliates by throwing his own son through the skyscraper window. The restaurant manager, who saw everything, simply couldn't believe what was happening. As they fall, Yujiro holds Baki and spanks him repeatedly before they both crash onto the Prime Minister's car waiting below. The police, who were there to arrest Yujiro, are completely paralyzed. Back inside the building, Baki lands a surprise slap on his father. In response, Yujiro demonstrates the whip strike, a technique that causes excruciating pain by targeting the skin, the body's largest organ. Baki endures the agonizing attack and, to Yujiro's shock, uses the same technique back on him. To withstand the pain, Yujiro contracts every muscle in his body at once. His appearance becomes grotesque, as if his skin has been peeled away, with every muscle fiber and vein visible. Yujiro Hanma confronts his son Baki and tells it like it is. Stop messing around and fight for real. Baki agrees and begins to relax his entire body, visualizing his muscles, joints, and even his blood cells turning to liquid and then to vapor to achieve a state of perfect relaxation. He then launches himself forward at nearly 270 kilometers per h in a move he calls the cockroach dash, slamming into Yujiro and sending them both through a glass panel.
He launches himself at his target.
What do you think, Dad? 167 miles per hour.
Impressed that Baki managed to achieve a state beyond liquid, Yujiro asks where he learned the technique before throwing him through several walls and out of the building. They land on what's left of the Prime Minister's limo, crushing it completely. The fight attracts a massive crowd and is being broadcast live on the news, turning the urban legend of their battle into a real event. People from all over the city rush to the scene to witness the spectacle. Annoyed by the audience, Yujiro tries to call off the fight, but Baki provokes him, accusing him of stage fright. Furious, Yujiro accepts the challenge to continue. Baki attacks with a 3-hit combo, but Yujiro counters with a devastating punch that sends Baki flying. He hits the ground hard, his face bloodied. Despite the damage, Baki gets up, stops his nose from bleeding just by flexing his facial muscles, and prepares to continue the fight. He then assumes a new stance, mimicking the form of a triceratops, the T-Rex's greatest rival. He visualizes the dinosaur and channels an absurd amount of power, pushing his father with such surreal force that he flips a nearby van. The crowd is in shock. Yujiro, though impressed, scoffs at it, calling it a cheap imitation. He takes the opportunity to lecture Baki on other animal-based fighting styles before showing off his own. The Yujiro Hanma Fist. It's pure, formless energy, a power that imitates nothing but itself, the strongest creature on Earth. Just as the throwdown is about to escalate, who shows up out of nowhere? The caveman, Pickle. Baki is pissed at the interruption and yells at him to leave. Getting the message, Pickle sits on the ground like a student who's learned not to meddle in grown-up fights. Yujiro and Baki then agree to a trigger battle, a test to see who's quicker on the draw. They enter a mental simulation, trading blows at impossible speeds, until Yujiro breaks the stalemate with a powerful kick that sends Baki flying. Afterward, Yujiro lays down some fatherly philosophy. True strength is the power to take whatever you want, no excuses. To demonstrate, he feigns a moment of paternal affection, only to catch Baki off guard and beat him down. He pummel's his own son, teaching him the hard way that strength is the ability to impose one's will. The lesson is delivered with overwhelming pain, leaving Baki defeated on the ground. Baki and his father, Yujiro, continue their brawl. A narrator explains that every fight has a half second before an attack, a tell that fighters watch for. But Yujiro, being the king of chaos, decides to change the rules. It will now be a 5-second countdown before his strike. As he counts on his fingers, Baki prepares. At the last second, instead of taking his hands out of his pockets, Baki drops his entire body. A much faster draw. He lands a direct hit with a move called the Tiger King and manages to pin Yujiro to the ground.
This secret technique imitates crushing tiger jaws. It's called Tiger King.
Baki immediately starts taunting his father, thinking he's won. Bad idea. Yujiro, with his one free hand, punches the asphalt with so much force that the shockwave shatters the ground and sends Baki flying. Shocked by the display of power, Baki admits he even pissed himself in fear, but declares he'll do anything to win, whether it means crying or using tricks. They clash again, and Yujiro copies Baki's spin kick, smiling with pride. He says he will finally awaken the dormant Hanma blood in his son. That's when Yujiro's demon back activates, his muscles forming the face of an Oni. A memory of Baki's mother appears, telling him to make his father happy. Yujiro then unleashes a punch that launches Baki into a van, completely destroying the vehicle.
Do as you're told! Make your father happy!
Defeated, Baki realizes he's fighting against ultra-violence and stands no chance. Lying on the ground, he feels the endorphin rush of a near-death experience and feels his own demon back beginning to form. He gets up exhausted and tells his father that's enough, expressing pride in having such a strong father. Suddenly, the ghost of Yujiro's father, Yujiro Hanma, appears and tells Baki he can win if he wants to. A flashback shows Yujiro single-handedly defeating the US Army with a technique called dress. Yujiro tells tells his son about the one technique from his own father, Yujiro, that he's proud of, the dress. Without ceremony, Yujiro grabs Baki by the hand and foot and starts swinging him around like a pair of nunchucks. The narrator explains that the centrifugal force is so intense that all the blood rushes to Baki's head, causing a red out. His vision turns completely red. Blood pours from his eyes, nose, and ears as the terrified crowd flees, creating an empty circle nearly 100 meters around them. Yujiro, calling Baki a human nunchaku, hurls him at a car, yelling for him to protect himself and not die. To Yujiro's complete shock, Baki lands on his feet, seemingly unharmed. He explains that while being spun, he managed to anticipate the impacts and defend himself before being hit. As a gift, Baki hands Yujiro a small samurai doll he carved from the car's metal parts, while being used as a weapon. Furious, Yujiro takes a punch from Baki, falls to the ground, and hears his son declare victory. Yujiro gets up, confessing that his life has been boring due to his overwhelming strength, and that he traveled the world fighting beasts and armies in search of a challenge, never realizing the ultimate toy was his own son. Just as they are about to restart, Baki's girlfriend Kozue arrives and scolds them both for being so tedious and sentimental. Baki explains that this is a special kind of game that only a father and son can play, a way to unleash all their power. The fight continues with even greater intensity, and the onlookers realize it's not a brawl, but a form of harmony. The battle ends with Baki sitting on Yujiro's shoulders, who asks if he's done everything he wanted to do. In an ancient salt layer, archaeologists find a drawing that looks like a prophecy. Two demon-like figures, father and son, ready to throw down. Behind the father, a crowd worships him like a god. Cut to the present, and an even larger crowd gathers to watch the live-action version. The final fight between Yujiro and Baki Hanma. Yujiro even recalls teaching a young Baki how to make a fist, calling it humanity's oldest and most refined weapon. As the two face off, the narrator warns, this isn't a fight or a martial art, it's a pure test of strength where both leave their vital points completely exposed. They advance and begin a brutal, simultaneous exchange of punches, straight to the face, with no defense whatsoever.
The thought doesn't even cross your mind.
The sound is so deafening that the crowd, which has come from all over the world, is in shock. Some even kneel to pray. A quick flashback shows that Yujiro has always been seen as a god by the weak, a force that even the world's most powerful nations tried to appease. The storm of punches continues until Baki falls to the ground, seemingly defeated. Yujiro declares it's over and turns to leave, but as the crowd parts for him, Baki, still on the ground, lands a phantom kick to his father's face. Yujiro is so rattled that he summons an imaginary dinner table with miso soup. Father and son sit down, but Baki complains the soup is too salty. Yujiro admits he lied, and that by forcing the ogre to cook for him, Baki imposed his will and earned the title of the world's strongest. Just then, it starts to rain, and Baki doesn't hear the declaration. Thinking he lost, he hangs his head. The greatest father-son fight in history ends with a handshake.
The fact is, I lost.
Greatest father-son fight in history. Ended right there.
After the fight, Baki gets an MRI, and the result shocks Dr. Kureya. The folds of his brain form the face of a demon. Kureya calls a top neuroscientist, who is equally astonished, confirming the brain belongs to an 18-year-old, but doesn't appear human. That night, Baki's aura is so sinister that as he walks through a park, an infestation of rats flees in a panic. The next day, Baki and Kozue have a classic anime moment, running to school with toast in their mouths, and Baki tells her he's happy for her. Later, some thugs try to pick a fight with Baki, but Mr. Kuriyagawa shows up to save the day. At a cafe, Baki opens up about the fight with his father, Yujiro, and begins to reflect on his mother, Emi. A flashback reveals Emi's life was an obsession to make Baki strong enough to be worthy of the ogre. When Yujiro cruelly dismisses all her efforts, Emi snaps and attacks Baki himself, blaming him for being weak. But then comes the memory that changes everything. His mother protecting him, punching Yujiro in the face before being crushed in a deadly embrace. Baki finally cries, understanding that his mother's last act was one of pure love, a sacrifice to save his life.
But she didn't just stand up to the great brute. No.
You're gonna have to fight me now!
You're hugging her too damn hard, Dad.
He now knows his true purpose, not to avenge his mother, but to repay her love by becoming the strongest and defeating his father. Yujiro Hanma strolls into the prison library just to mess with Biscuit Oliva, saying that so much muscle and so many books are signs of insecurity. When Oliva mentions Baki's fight with the caveman Pickle, Yujiro dismisses the use of martial arts, calling it an impurity in a true contest of strength. The two get into it, and Yujiro dominates Oliva with absurd ease, throwing him into a pile of books. The narrator confirms Yujiro won simply because his head was a few centimeters higher. Meanwhile, in Japan, the elderly Tokugawa offers over 3 billion yen to the prime minister to make the father-son brawl between Yujiro and Baki an official public event. In a meeting, the prime minister learns the terrifying truth about Yujiro from his cabinet, known as the Ogre. He is the strongest being on Earth, a one-man military power who has a non-aggression pact with the US and once single-handedly defeated 100 riot police to assault a former prime minister. Elsewhere, Captain Stridham prepares for his annual attempt to kill Yujiro, arming himself with explosives, a poisoned knife, and even gunpowder in his fists. Yujiro appears out of nowhere and effortlessly disarms him, causing Stridham's own traps to blow up in his face. As this unfolds, Baki trains by punching an imaginary Yujiro with so much force that it causes a small earthquake and destroys his basement wall. Yujiro then visits Tokugawa, who, concerned, asks about his health. Seeing this as a sign of weakness, Yujiro becomes enraged and attacks Tokugawa, causing a fatal hemorrhage. The narrator explains Yujiro's unique power, the ability to see the weak points in any person or object, a curse that has led him to crush every opponent he has ever faced. An old man, known as the Noble Elder, is in bad shape on a hospital bed, and his doctor, Kureya, informs him he'll need more tests. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, undefeated boxing champion Akio Mani is at a press conference, acting like hot stuff, saying all 14 of his victories were first-round knockouts, and the next one will be no different. Later at the gym, Mani is training when he sees Retsu completely destroy a punching bag with a single punch. Intrigued, the champ invites Retsu to spar. Retsu calmly refuses, saying it would be unfair to himself, as he'd have to hold back to keep from turning Mani into mincemeat. Provoked, Mani doesn't back down, and Retsu ends up accepting the fight. In the ring, it's over faster than an Instagram story. Retsu throws one punch and knocks the champion out cold. Afterward, Retsu tells the gym's trainer that victory is the only thing that justifies his methods. That night, Baki Hanma visits Katsumi Orochi, who is practicing his new, insanely fast one-armed karate style. Baki vents that his inevitable fight with his father, Yujiro, isn't about hatred, but simply because they are father and son. Katsumi then shares the latest gossip. Retsu has decided to enter the world of boxing, using only his kung fu to become the champion. Retsu begins his boxing journey and takes a punch that knocks him down, but he gets up as if he just downloaded his opponent's instruction manual, analyzing the weakness caused by the boxing gloves. He retaliates with a blow so brutal it shatters the other guy's arm and skull, breaking his own hand in the process. The legend of the boxer, seeking Retsu, has just been born. President Barack shows up at a US military base in Japan for an emergency meeting with the Prime Minister and other officials. The topic? The absurd power of Yujiro Hanma and his son Baki, who are basically compared to entire nations in terms of strength. The politicians suggest intervening in the father-son brawl, but Barack reveals he has a connection with Yujiro. He shows a vial of coal dust, explaining that Yujiro crushed a lump of coal with his bare hands as a little favor. Suddenly, like a ghost out of a horror movie, Yujiro himself appears in the room, bypassing all the Pentagon-level security. He confronts Barack, takes the vial, crushes it again, and transforms the dust into a diamond crucifix. Yes, the man made a diamond with his hand. Yujiro forces the president to renew his oath of non-interference, warning him and the other world leaders to stay out of his domestic affairs. Meanwhile, at a boxing gym, Retsu Kaio has been training in a static pose for hours, simply because he's already beaten all his sparring partners. His meditation is interrupted by the arrival of a famous American boxing promoter, Kaiser. Impressed by Retsu's physique, Kaiser asks for a demonstration of his strength. Retsu picks up an old boxing glove and disintegrates it with a single punch. Kaiser goes ballistic, declaring this a war between boxing boxing and Chinese kung fu, and offers Retsu a multi-million-dollar contract for an exhibition match in the United States. In his training basement, Baki is exercising to exhaustion, trying to achieve a liquid state of his muscles, inspired by the movements of a cockroach. Then, he sits down to enjoy a massive feast alongside Yujiro. They eat, but a brief argument over the salty miso soup ends with Yujiro flipping the table in a rage.
And there you go.
To end the day, Baki's girlfriend, Kozue, arrives at his house. Live from Las Vegas, promoter Kaiser introduces his new star, Retsu Kaio, now with a prosthetic leg. Former heavyweight champion Andrei Valev storms in, furious, but Kaiser fans the flames, saying Retsu came to insult boxing. Retsu doesn't disappoint and calls Valev a man with a small brain. Challenged to demonstrate his power on concrete blocks, Retsu suggests Valev is a more interesting target. Enraged, Valev shatters the blocks himself. Retsu then, with a gentle touch, turns another pile of blocks to dust, leaving everyone's jaws on the floor. Later at the hotel, former boxer Mills warns Retsu to back out of the fight. To prove his point, he throws a quick jab that gives Retsu a nosebleed, showing off a boxer's speed. But as Mills is leaving, Retsu reveals the plot twist. He dislocated and reset the man's wrist on pure reflex during the punch. Impressed, Mills lets the fight proceed. In the ring, Valev is fast and powerful. Retsu, however, adopts a crouched stance in the corner and declares he will win without throwing a single punch. As Valev charges, Retsu lands a 0-inch punch, a blow with no visible movement, that knocks the giant out cold. Retsu becomes an overnight celebrity, pockets $2 million, and hears from Kaiser that other powerful fighters will now be coming for him. Back in Japan, Baki is at home when he senses the arrival of his father. The ogre is sitting in his living room. When Baki serves him coffee, Yujiro complains about the quality. Baki apologizes profusely, but Yujiro smashes the table, saying that if Baki wants something from him, he must take it by force. As he leaves, Baki mutters, "Don't slam the door," a small act of defiance that brings a smile to Yujiro's face. The final showdown is getting closer. Here we see Tokugawa getting some bad news from his doctor. He's sick and needs treatment, but the old man is like a stubborn Jedi master and refuses, saying everyone has their own path and he has no regrets. Philosophical. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a brawler named Chiharu Shiba shows up out of nowhere and challenges Baki Hanma to a fight for no reason at all. Baki, who has no time for randoms, lays the guy out with a single punch. We find out that Hanayama was the one who sent Chiharu to pick that fight, but the dude is persistent, gets up, and attacks again, only to be knocked out a second time. Meanwhile, Kaiser, who also works as a boxing promoter, sets up a match for Retsu Kaio against Smokin' Joe Cruiser, an older boxer who, according to Kaiser, has no talent. But later, the legendary Muhammad Ali shows up to give Retsu a heads up. He warns that fighting Joe is like fighting smoke. It surrounds you, suffocates you, and when you least expect it, the knockout comes. In the ring, the prediction comes true. Retsu takes a beating and realizes that boxing gloves, which look like pillows, are actually sledgehammers for the brain, causing massive internal damage. After hitting the canvas, he remembers a training session with Kaku Kaio, who taught him a technique of spinning to disperse impact, like keeping a block of tofu whole in a spinning bowl of water. As Retsu's vision starts to melt, the scene cuts back to Baki, who's fed up with Chiharu's persistence. To teach him a lesson, he does the most Baki thing possible. He smashes the heel of his own shoe to give himself a disadvantage. Chiharu calls him an idiot and attacks. Baki ends up bloodied but impressed. He finally understands that Chiharu's strength comes from a pure, unfiltered fighting spirit. The brawl between Baki Hanma and Chiharu Shiba continues in a graffiti-covered alley. Chiharu, with his philosophy that a fight only ends when someone gives up, charges in. Baki dodges everything with ease and knocks him down, but Chiharu doesn't give up. He gets back on his feet, refusing to quit. Baki, amused by the situation, decides to fight in Chiharu's own style. Total chaos. He starts mimicking his opponent, taking hits on purpose just so he can hit back, and explains the Chiharu style, using your weakest points as weapons. Furious, Chiharu threatens to gouge Baki's eyes out. Baki, a master of psychological warfare, calls his bluff, saying the guy has never actually done it and dares him to try. To make matters worse, Baki offers to run with his eyes open straight at Chiharu's extended fingers. As Chiharu hesitates, Baki unleashes his cockroach dash. The guy can't even close his hand in time and ends up with broken fingers from the impact with Baki's face. The scene shifts to Retsukayo, who's on the mat, knocked out by Smokin' Joe. His brain is scrambled, but he remembers another lesson from his master: shake your head to synchronize with your brain and recover. It sounds insane, but it works. Retsu gets up, stunning the crowd, and goes all out, knocking Joe out with a clean shot. Even the champion Wilbur Bolt comes to congratulate him.
This man, holding up my arm, he's the world champion.
Later, Chiharu, all busted up, tells Hanayama about the fight, deludedly claiming he could have done what Baki did. At home, Baki watches a cockroach and gets an idea for a new technique. Yujiro Hanma, the ogre, meets with General Stridum and drops a pearl of wisdom. The upcoming fight with Baki isn't a battle, it's a father-son quarrel. And to illustrate, he uses the most random analogy ever. In a family, it doesn't matter who does the cooking. Okay then. Meanwhile, Baki asks Tokugawa to ensure no civilians get hurt during the event. Tokugawa, super hyped, compares Yujiro to a natural disaster and promises that nothing will stop the confrontation. Later, at a bar, Yujiro has a rare moment of vulnerability and confesses to Doppo Orochi that he loves Baki and has nightmares about being defeated by his own son.
A bad one. A dream where he always defeats me. There's no way that'll ever happen. That's why it's called a dream.
The tension rises when Baki prepares a feast at home and Yujiro shows up. To everyone's shock, the ogre displays impeccable table manners and even scolds Baki for not respecting the food. To decide who does the dishes, they play rock, paper, scissors. Baki wins with rock, but Yujiro refuses to lose. He simply crushes Baki's hand, forcing his fingers into the shape of paper, and declares himself the winner. Genius.
1, 2, 3, go! Dad?
Afterward, he invites his son to a formal dinner the next day. At a luxury restaurant, Yujiro, wearing a suit and everything, criticizes Baki's casual clothes and starts giving a lesson on etiquette. The evening continues in this bizarrely civilized manner until Baki drops the bomb. "Dad, why did you kill my mother?" The peace is instantly shattered. Yujiro goes ballistic, flips the table, and warns his son not to cross certain lines, but Baki insists on an answer. Yujiro snaps, and the two finally prepare for their long-awaited showdown.